And I said, hello. And he said, hi, Alison, Tom Rennie here. And I said, shut up, Brian. Because I figured it was my brother Brian playing a joke on me. Not a thing you want to say to the president of Hockey Canada. So anyway, he asked if I would come and be part of a presentation. So I was. And then he said to me, I said, do you see yourself promoting this book? And he said, Alison, you have to know you've told a very honest story. I think it scared him a little bit. And then from there, he asked me back again to speak to the senior staff. And that's when Barry Petrochenko from BC Hockey, I don't know if anybody knows him, but he contacted me. We created a video series based on the lessons from the book. And then it kind of snowballed from there. I ended up traveling kind of across Canada, talking to some of the hockey branches, but mainly talking to the boards. So I would talk to like some of the senior staff and the board. Getting to the grassroots parents was a little bit more of a challenge. But yeah, and that's kind of how it's gone from there. So basically the premise for me of this book is that parents want their kids to make it to the NHL. And in doing that, they're missing what their kids get from hockey. It's the one time on the ice where they don't have their devices, they don't have their cell phones, and it's a time when there's so much bullying and all that kind of thing. When you're on the ice, you're just playing. You're playing and you're enjoying yourself and you're getting exercise and you're doing all the things we're trying to get back to. So that's a quick version of sort of where I come from in all of this.
Sure. And I did overlook Malcolm. Sorry, I did overlook Malcolm. He's got his tech issues worked out. And we have Kim McCullough online as well now, Alison, from Leaside in Toronto. She runs the largest female hockey organization in the world, I think. Kim, you can correct if I'm wrong, but anyway, she's a Dartmouth grad and played some high-level female hockey in WHL and was on the periphery of national team stuff and everything. A great person. And just really quickly, I don't know, and again, guys, and Kim, if you have a question, just stick your hand up. And I'll try to keep track, interject at any time. And Alison, I was wondering, the one thing that really struck me, you kind of forewarned me that the little videos with your son were, I don't think you said brutally honest, but sort of bordering on that. And it was really terrific. I don't know if anybody had a chance to watch. I think it was in the first one, where Alison was saying about the drive home from the rink, and she thought she and her husband handled it pretty well. And right away, Brock was like, no, you didn't. So I wondered if you could sort of comment on that a little bit. It's kind of the stereotypic view that you go on to talk about as well, that like in terms of how parents see their kids versus how the coaches might see their kids. And obviously is probably the single biggest issue that all of us face.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I learned is because I thought I kept it positive. So I would say to him, so the morning of a big game, if he was playing, I would start by have a good breakfast. You have to have a good breakfast. You got a big game going. Make sure you get some rest this afternoon. Big game coming. Get in the car. Big game coming. Be at your best. And so as much as I kept it positive, it's all I talked about to him. So it put so much pressure on him. And then he'd get out of the car, get in the rink, and his coach was doing what he should do, telling him the same thing. And then by the time he got back in the car after the game, I'd be asking him about it again. And so what happened was, instead of being the mom to make the meal and have conversations about school and different things, I was doing it all about hockey. And that was really eye-opening because that was our first video. We just arrived in Vancouver. They'd invited us both to come. He had read my book, so I really felt like I had kind of owned all my mistakes and we were on the same page. So when we sat down in front of filming and we had representatives from Hockey Canada, people there, and I'm feeling very proud of my son, he's beside me, and he called me out in front of everybody. And but again, you continue to learn with your kids, right? And he now coaches, and so he continues to teach me, and he will say to me, oh my God, Mom, I was just dealing with somebody and it was you, So yeah, I think a lot of parents, we keep it positive and I just say have fun. Well, if you say have fun 15 times during game day, your kids realize how important it is to you, and it starts to feel like pressure.
Yeah, I was just writing down that that's just good parenting that your son felt comfortable enough to call you out in that kind of a situation, let alone whenever. It sort of brings me right to one of the things that Wally sort of coined with a friend of his in the coaching vernacular. It's one of the sort of principles that we sort of live by as Sharks, and that is in terms of like dealing with players, and in this case, even your son, it's all about the right stuff, the right amount, at the right time, in the right tone. And so you were all about not the right amount, even though it was positive. We all think positive is great. Everybody likes to hear that, and we do. But it's a great lesson in that, like stay out of the players' heads really as much as you can, or respect the fact that too much is too much.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Did you want to follow up on that at all, Wally?
I I hope I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I had a chance to look at all 10 sessions, Allison, and I sent you the email of really this group. The reason I'm participating is more for minor hockey than professional hockey. We've all had great coaching experience. We all been parents. I've had 3 daughters. I'm sure glad Kim is on. The one thing I noted in your book, you're a mom talking about boys hockey, and there are problems the same in girls hockey.
Mhm.
But Dave, I'm glad Dave's on board because in 1990 we did something to attempt to deal with ethical coaching, which may not have occurred in your time, is something that parents had to deal with, cope with. And sometimes some of the things you had to put up with weren't necessarily, in my mind, professional or ethical. They were designed for them to get to the NHL, and it's lent itself to a real fractured minor hockey environment, which in fact is a very unhealthy competitive environment when you look at what it does take to win.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to your thing, and I'm sure glad you got Tom Rennie to put that on because it's very valid. But I believe in 1990, had we been able to get this instituted in coaching education, they may have been able to coach differently and also influence parents and the boards that get elected to administrate and lead more ethically. So that's sort of where I come from on it. And our line is with the young athlete is to transmit belief. And that's what we look to do. And my reason for concern was I believe you're from your boy grew up in Ontario.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping Lisa Haley would get on. She's the head coach at Ryerson. And Lisa's coached in a couple of Olympics, as have a few of us. And Lisa is really in the middle of what you're writing about with her sons in Bantam AAA hockey in Ontario. So things have not changed despite your efforts of writing a book. And we're on the same side as you on this topic. And in my mind, the problem isn't the parents. They have to cope with it. But I still think we've got work to do on the coach education side, which I believe can help solve the problem because good coaches, they will last a long time. So that's just my 2 bits worth. I love the book. Your son impressed me. Like he got it.
Yeah.
And he always got it. Adults don't get it.
So true. Yeah.
And that's the essence of the book. And we're dealing with parents, and a lot of the interviews, and there was some BC coaches was almost saying you have to cope with whatever it is because whatever it is the way it is. It is the way it is. could be different. It should be different. Malcolm, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, everyone. I had some trouble with tech issues here and getting my audio and my visual going, so I was talking to a blank screen. But great to be here this morning. And Allison, I guess I have a question just following up on what you have talked about. And I haven't seen your book or your videos, so I'm kind of going off the cuff here and learning as we're going. But I've done a fair amount of research on coaching, education, and advancement of the game. So sort of come at it from an academic background, but also from as a coach at a variety of levels into varsity and professional, and back down as my kids went through the system as well. So my question is that most of minor hockey coaches are parents. So they get involved because their children are involved. And I think what happens, and I'm just guessing, I think what happens is that as adults get involved in minor hockey as coaches, they get a little bit of this competitive spirit going, and it's hard to divide your role between a parent and a coach. So with regard to that dynamic or dichotomy, what's your feeling on parent coaches and how to separate the roles between being just a dad or a mom or being coach?
I think it's important. I know in our situation when there was parent coaching, and my husband actually parented my son, and I found it more the opposite in that he was a lot harder on him. He was much quicker to pull him and quicker to. So in that way, he was emotionally involved, on the opposite end of it, kind of thing, which doesn't help either. I do think there needs to be some form of, so what they've done here in Belleville is they will have somebody that isn't a parent, an outside person who is sort of a coach mentor, and the parents can talk to them to then talk to the coach to say, okay, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm finding, and the coach mentor kind of coaches the coach. So I think that helps with parent coaches. And I will say some of Brock's better coaches were the parent coaches. When we got into some of the former professional hockey players, and not saying anything bad, but when we got into some of those, some of them were more there to tell their story and the things that they'd done, and they it wasn't as healthy. So I just think in all cases there has to be an outside person to be somewhat accountable.
Yeah, so in Canada, we know that these volunteer minor coaches, parent or otherwise, sort of go through the system, and they often follow the developmental path of players. So they begin at a low level age, and as they move up, maybe they do some certification training and whatnot, and they move up. But in Europe, it's different. In Europe, they have club teams, and at the top of the club team, they have a professional coach who acts as a mentor and leads out and creates more of a program for the specific communities. So I'm wondering if you have knowledge of that, and if what do you think of maybe a professional model in Canada, having these club professionals or mentors as leaders? Do you think that would add value to our current system, or?
Yeah, you mean leaders in that they're sort of on the outside, but they're there to support the coaches, or if there's issues, they're there to. So are they leaders in that they're kind of coaching the coaches that are volunteers? Is that what you mean?
Well, in Europe, the head coach of the men's professional team or senior team is a paid professional, and then he basically sets up a network below of other professionals and or volunteer individuals, depending on the size of the community and the level of the club where they're playing. But I'm just, this pandemic has given me an opportunity to take a look at our coach system and just independently. And I've wondered for years if the professional coach model that is in soccer and in European hockey, the club system, would have some value in our Canadian system. And from your perspective as a parent and writing about this, I'm wondering what your feeling is on that.
I think it's a little bit above my knowledge, to be honest with you. Like I don't. from my perspective, from my grassroots being the mom, watching, is that what it came down to, and throughout the book we did have some pretty brutal experiences with some of our coaches, in that they were let go, a little bit of inappropriate stuff going on, and inappropriate, I'm talking language, that kind of thing, really, really bad. And I think it comes down to it, having coaches with character, and having coaches with integrity, and having coaches that are ego aside and are there for the kids. And yes, they want to win and they want to develop them. And if somebody can sort of gauge that and see that and be a mentor and know that that's happening, and if anything outside of that is happening, then it's dealt with. That's the only way I can kind of speak to it. I just think they have to be accountable to somebody other than the parents, because the parents are going to make them accountable if their kid isn't playing enough, which isn't fair to the coaches. So to have somebody on the outside that knows what they're doing, that is strong, and that stays close to the game, and whether they're paid for that, I don't know. That's what I would see working. So if that's kind of what you're speaking to, I would say yes, that would be good.
And Kim will come right to you next, but just right on that point, I love what you said there, Allison, because it would for sure depend on sort of the philosophy and the approach of that quote unquote pro coach mentor. Like if he's a pro coach and coaching to win and coaching more for himself, as you pointed out, if he's in it for the kids, great. If he's got a real pro coach mentality, no disrespect, Dave, haha, because I was one myself, and we all are. But and the right philosophy is obviously the key thing. And I'll, like, Kim, if you want to ask something on this topic, absolutely go ahead. I just had a quick related question, like for Allison, like on this topic, what was your best coach experience as parents, like parent coach, and or that coupled with a good experience for Brock? Like, is there somebody that sticks out?
Yeah.
Next.
It would be his goalie coach, interestingly enough. So his goalie coach was somebody who was very good. So Brock, and I need to say this, that I think it's important that kids are coached in a way that they are at their best. They'll be their best at the game, and especially if they're wanting to move up and do more, you've got to have that competitive edge. So I think that's important. His goalie coach never ever cared if he hurt his feelings. Never cared if he hurt our feelings. Never. There was no gray area. You're not working hard enough. And they formed a trust, and he was part of his experience for a lot of years. And I remember he had wanted to call him up to play on a team, and he came to watch him to see how he was doing. And Brock didn't have a good game, and he knew what his abilities were, but he didn't have a good game. And he spoke to him after, and Brock said, "But you know how I can play." And he said, "But you didn't show up for me. You didn't show up for me. You assumed you got it, and you didn't show up for me." And it taught Brock, and the next time he was able to do it. And I remember contacting him once saying, he didn't make the team, and he seemed like he was so close, and he said he wasn't good enough. He wasn't good enough. Other people are going to be better. He wasn't good enough. And so all along it was respectful. He was never, he wasn't a screamer. He was just very methodical. This is what you need to do, and you just need to be better, and I'll help you do that. So I would say he was a best experience, and they're still friends today.
Nice. Kim, go ahead. Just I gave you a little intro, I think, earlier, but go ahead.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm kind of kicking myself I didn't look at all your information earlier, because this is right up my alley. So as Tim said, I guess as Malcolm said, I am that coach mentor now at Leaside, in addition to doing many other things. So I've coached at the highest level in our organization, and am now in charge of a lot of things within the organization. And it's interesting what you said about like the paid versus parent coach differences. We have about 6 paid coaches in our organization. They all happen to be females who played at a high level. There will be a male one who played at a high level next year as well, but mostly, as you said, former players. And then we've got a bevy of parent coaches. We have 28 rep teams and about 40 house league teams, give or take. And the majority of them are parent coaches. So there's a very small group of us, including myself, although I'll be stepping back from coaching next year. at least in the team environment. And it's very interesting to hear people's different experiences, both at the parent level and the coaching level. So the parents often think we're Mike Babcock or whoever, like we're getting paid millions of dollars to do this. And so it has to be our full-time vocation, and we couldn't possibly not cater to their every whim. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, anything the parent coach does, it's like, hey, we had a pancake breakfast. They're all like, oh, they're the best person in the world. We love them. So, I'm in this great position of being able to, look at the whole, but I do think there's very different expectations. I would love to hear a little bit of your experience with that. And if you and your husband or even your son had that mindset of, because it was a non-parent, did you treat them differently, or did you have different expectations than someone who was volunteering their time?
Yes. And before I answer this, I need to tell you, I have since learned from this. So when my son was in his draft year, there was a younger coach. He was a good coach. And of course, he wasn't there long. They ended up, anyway, I had a lot of expectations from him. He had come in and we had a meeting about, all the things that he did and what his expectations were. And so if he didn't sort of come and give me the time after, or give us the time, or wasn't fully communicating. And at that stage in the game, he should have been communicating with Brock, not with us. Brock at that point is 14 years old. So there wasn't a lot to talk to us about it. So I felt very frustrated. I felt at that level, he should be speaking to the parents, and this was his role, and he's getting paid for this. Fast forward to after Brock's done playing, and my husband is coaching minor midget. He's coaching a draft team, and 10 of the kids got drafted from this team. So highly, highly competitive. And the expectations of the parents. So my husband would work full time, come home, scrape off his car, go to a practice an hour and a half away, was never late, did all the, and we'd have parents calling, ticked off about this or ticked off. And I'd be like, this cannot be your full-time job. And I remember my husband kind of kept his mouth shut, and we were at a tournament, and the first year tournament always fell on our wedding anniversary. So we'd always go to a tournament and try to steal a dinner. So his team was playing draft year, beginning of the year. We hop on an elevator after a game to go for dinner, and one of the moms gets in the elevator and presses door close, and she starts to talk, and so my husband just nicely said, set up a time with me, we'll have a meeting after. And she walked out, and we went out for dinner, and I said, I cannot believe that woman did that. I cannot believe. And he said, that was literally you 5 years ago. That was literally you. And her expectation was, you are here for this full weekend, even after the game, at the hotel for me. And so I can say I've seen both sides of it. And now when I get out and speak to parents, I will say to them, your coach puts in this amount of time, and after the game, when it's over, that's when it's your time to be a parent. Let the game be over, and he'll coach your kid when the time comes. So that's a long answer. That's a really long answer, but that's kind of my experience on both sides of the fence.
Just to follow up on that, I guess, now do you then provide some advice about boundaries? Because I find quite often our paid coaches, they put up fences or they get defensive very quickly, and they're not necessarily as accommodating as some of our parent coaches are in those types of scenarios. Now, the other piece of that is that I'm the only paid coach with children. So none of our other paid coaches have any kids. And that seems to be a sticking point for a lot of the parents of our players. Well, they don't have kids, and so therefore they don't know X, Y, and Z. But I'm finding, I find our paid coaches have a tough time setting up those boundaries, and they feel that pressure to be always available because they're getting paid, and they're not getting paid nothing, but they're certainly not getting paid a full-time wage. They're not a professional coach, right, in the true sense of the word. So would you have any advice or something on either end, either it being a parent of a player who is on a team with a paid coach, or advice for those paid coaches in terms of how to set up reasonable boundaries, right, knowing that there's such high expectations of you?
So, you want me to wait a second?
sorry, just 1 second. I'm not sure, guys. Let's all mute ourselves until we want to talk. The background noise going on, if everybody can hear me.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, thank you.
So on the parent side, the way I coach the parents now, if I'm talking it, and throughout the book, it's kind of the same thing, is what I will say is, if your kids are not unsafe, and if they're not in a situation where you are worried about them as far as it's going to be damaging to them, that kind of thing, then you are not at the coach's door. If they are coaching, if they're on the ice with them, if they're teaching the skills, that's what they're there to do. If your child is upset because they're not getting enough ice time, it is your job as parents to help them manage that, to say to them, okay, what are you upset about? Could you work harder? Could you do this? You know, you're there to kind of hug them at the end of the game. That's not on. And it's also your job to teach your kids, okay, how do I have that conversation with my coach once they're at a certain age? But how do I have that conversation with my coach? On the coach's side, what I have said before is absolutely have the boundaries, the 24-hour rule, or send me an email, you know, then we can have a conversation. But if the parents are following those boundaries, make sure you are calling them back. Make sure you are meeting with them. Don't let that go and start to assume that, oh, that's just the crazy parent. But on the same note, if you've answered the same question 3 times to them, you say to them, I don't have a different answer for you. So if you reach out to me about this again, I'm not going to be able to respond. I've got this many other kids to look after. So I think if you're answering the same question over and over again to a parent about ice time, about this, about that, I think you're well within your rights to say, we've had this conversation twice, 3, however many times you set it up. I think this is as far as we go with it. Your son or daughter is not the only one on my team.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm sure I'll have plenty of questions later too.
Sure.
I have a question. I'm trying to flip on the switch so my hand goes up. I'm sorry if I didn't, but Dave, are you still on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah. I just typed in Allison. Dave's recently written a book, and we've had a one-on-one interview that I've been editing and sharing with, literally 300 to 500 coaches around the world, primarily in Canada. One of the chapters in his book, Dave, talked about parent and coach continuums. And I believe that chapter is sort of related to the work that Allison's doing. And when we did this interview with Dave, it was for what I call the non-competitive side of hockey, but it relates to the competitive side as well. So I wonder if you would mind if you could just talk about that continuum a bit in terms of the ethical piece of coaching and where the line might be more acceptable.
Yeah, Wally, thank you. And Allison, as I said before, I'm not an expert at coaching children. I did it a long time ago, 40 years ago. So my experience, but I've been a grandparent, and I watch my boys play, and so I think I had some experience. So when I was doing the book, I tried to come up with a continuum in terms of behavior or expectations, if you like. And so in my book, I said for a coach, I'll read this, there's a continuum. There's at one end of the spectrum, there's coaches that are intimidating. At the other end of the spectrum, there's coaches that are motivating. Somewhere in between is where I have a real preference for motivating versus intimidating, but that exists, that continuum exists. There's a continuum between demanding and understanding. The demanding coach is very focused, doesn't understand the kids have maybe gone through a day of school where they've had some issues, and so that's a continuum where you have to have reach some balance. I always talk about balance being so important. There's on the ice, there's instructing and guiding. A lot of coaches are total instruction. I like the approach where you ask a few questions. You have to do some instruction, but asking questions, guiding youngsters is a good thing. And then the last one I had, which probably relates to a little bit to the tactical side of the game, some coaches really want conformity. They want everybody to play the same. And the other end of the spectrum, it's creativity, where you let players express themselves, because all players are different, and there's a tendency in the game to coach down to the lowest common denominator. We often do that, and that, in my opinion, doesn't give the skilled guy maybe a chance to do his thing. From the parents' perspective, I felt there was a continuum between constant scrutiny. They go to a game and they constantly scrutinize their kids' play. Allyson, at the other end, there's observing and enjoying. I've seen people that go to the games and that's all they want from their child is to observe and enjoy and see them having some fun, and they see a bigger picture. So there's a balance somewhere in there between those two. There's pressure feedback, which you talked a bit about, and then there's supportive, encouraging feedback. To me, that continuum is really, really important for parents. There's appreciation for tactical skill development, but I think a parent also has to have an appreciation for the socialization, psychological skill development that's going on for the youngster playing a game, because it's important to be part of a team. It's a good, positive experience. So there's a continuum there. And then there's a continuum where there's over expectation. At the other end, you've got having fun and enjoyment. And that's a perspective some people have a lot of over expectation. And my feeling is, in my days with hockey schools, and I see Alan Andrews is on, and he's an expert, a lot of times parents want it a lot more than their kids do. And that is sometimes the essence of the problem. So in my book, again, I'm not an expert, but I just tried to give the reader some food for thought, because I always talk about balance in what you do, no matter what you do in life, what your profession is, if you're a coach or a player, whatever, I mean, any role in life, if you achieve some balance, usually it's because you see a bigger picture. You see the game, you see the activity or the job in perspective. And I've got who lives in Calgary, and he's been a coordinator for a zone for 20 some years. Andrew has, and he's also coached ring ed and hockey for 20 years. And the stories he tells me about it is very interesting. And so I don't have answers more than I always talk to parents about balance, making sure that the youngster wants to come back and play tomorrow, kind of measure success in smiles versus everything else, you know. So thanks, Wally. Thanks, Wally.
Do you mind passing the name of your book?
Yeah, my book is called Loose Pucks and Ice Bags. Strange title, I guess, but it's a book that's a portion of it's good for fans and spectators, I think, a little bit, but it is a book for a hockey coach. It's got a narrow, not narrow audience, but I guess it is in terms of it does, I guess. So, and I just tried to, that chapter, I called that chapter, Wally, what did I call that chapter?
You're asking the wrong guy. I'm getting a dementia test on the weekend. So
you gave me you put me on the spot here. Yeah, I called it Apple Pie in the Sky. ... I don't think so. So the whole part of the chapter, Allyson, is about, I like what Hockey Canada and USA Hockey are doing with their programs now in terms of some small ice thing. They're helping coaches learn to guide versus just instruct. They're doing more work on coaches trying to see some perspective in the game, what their role is, its development, to enjoy the activity. If they're not enjoying it, likely the kid's not enjoying it. So it's just a chapter on perspective. That's all it is.
I love it. I wrote down two things that am I okay to go ahead here?
Oh, sure. Jordan's next with a question when we get a chance, but go ahead, Allyson.
Okay, I was just going to say, I wrote down two things that you said there, Dave. One of them was the socialization, and the other one was the big picture. So one of the things that I always talk about when I go out and speak is that my son, as he came out of hockey and he started to apply for jobs and started to look at career and all that kind of thing, he knew how to go into a job interview, and if he didn't get the job, he would hold his head up. He knew how to dress for the interview, first of all, and he would hold his head up, he would shake the person's hand and say, thanks so much for the opportunity. And I feel really strongly that learning about disappointment every time he got cut taught him so much. You don't always get the relationship you want. You don't always get the job you want. Things like that happen in life. And I think the things that he learned from that from hockey and from the game have sustained him. And you all know this. You all know this. I didn't know it at the time because, again, I was too caught up in him getting far in the game. The stuff he learned outside of that has been invaluable. So that whole piece about the big picture, and the other piece about socialization. One of the things, so my job outside of this writing is I do counseling, and I work with something called Safe Talk. And Safe Talk, I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's recognizing the signs and symptoms of somebody who is thinking about suicide. And the day that I was invited to go speak at Hockey Canada for my first talk, the morning, my daughter's really good friend, a young man, he was a goalie, died by suicide. And he waited till the end of the hockey season. So his mom said when his mental health was suffering, as long as he was playing hockey, he would not let the team down. It was a place for him to go. It was a place for him to be social. He wasn't being bullied on the ice. He didn't have his devices with him. And at the end of the hockey season, when hockey was over, she always worried about him. And I found out the morning I was going to speak that he had passed away. So as part of my talk, I talk about that. And the other piece of socialization is, as these kids get to know each other and as they get close to each other, if you've got a parent and if you've got a child that's good enough that they keep moving up and moving up and moving up, and it becomes their whole life, part of coaching and part of parenting in this, I think, has to be, what do they do after? What do they do after? Their whole schedule, their whole life, all of their friendships have been based on this game. And then you reach an age where you're starting into a career that you don't necessarily love. You have to go off to school, and maybe you didn't make the team in university. What do we do after? And as much as we hear it all over, and I know that it's, especially right now during COVID, it's a big thing. Mental health with kids needs to be looked at in the game, because the game can be a huge help in that area. And I don't think we look enough at what happens next for the kids that are going to move on and maybe don't make it. So those are just two things I wanted to say speaking to that. So sorry, Jordan, I went on a little long, but yeah.
No, that was good. Thank you.
No, that's great information, Alison. And I think that I'm a huge advocate for mental health in youth, obviously with the role I play in my profession. And no, that's good information, and always a great reminder that we don't necessarily know what's going on in their worlds beyond what they're doing in the time that we see them. We see that obviously in schools, where whenever we're leading up to a long or an extended break, that we'll see students' anxieties ramp up, certain students, because we know that they're ramping up to some dysfunction in their life, and that the school is that place where they feel safe. And same with, as you're saying, with that young man and the sport, that hockey is everything. And when that hockey goes away, it leaves a huge void. So thank you for that reminder. And you answered one of the questions I was going to ask you, because you talked about your mental health background. I was going to ask where you came up with the idea of journaling your issues or your frustrations as a hockey mom. And I think that because that obviously was a key way of you learning from your own experience. And I love the message that you're providing from what you've learned, and that piece. And I know that, Malcolm, you're talking about other parts of the world. Well, it just happened that one of my staff members gave me this novel for Christmas. It's called Beartown, and it's set in Sweden. And when you're reading through it and reading between the lines, the hockey parents in Sweden are every bit as hockey crazed as in Canada. And that book, funny enough, could have been set in any northern junior hockey town in any province across Canada. So it was a really interesting read. But the question I actually have for you, Alison, is, what do you think that hockey parent that you were needed from a coach, or what could a coach have provided you at that time that would have satisfied what you were thinking or feeling, or is there anything that without you having to be reflective through journaling and coming to your learning in it, is there anything that a coach could have provided you?
That's a really good question. So two sides. I think probably if I was given the best information from the best coach in the middle of it, I couldn't have heard it like I can now, because I wasn't in the middle of it. That said, like I said, my son's goalie coach, when he said to me one time on the phone, when I said, I thought he was going to make this team, why didn't he make this team? And he said to me, he's not good enough. The other guy's better. He's not good enough. As a parent, when you go through this, you'll often hear parents say, well, I brought my brother. My brother used to play hockey and he watched my son and he said he was so good. Or I brought a friend of a friend who used to coach so-and-so. If you have a relationship with somebody that is giving you opinion on your child, they're not necessarily going to be honest. So that coach brutally saying to me he wasn't good enough, and he didn't care how I felt. He didn't care how I thought. He didn't care if we continued on as a goalie coach. So I think just that brutal honesty, it shocked me. And I remember having an argument with my husband saying, I don't really like what he had to say, blah, blah, blah. And my husband said, you can't just like him when he says good things. If you trust him when he says good things, you can't not trust him when he says bad things. And so just that brutal honesty, I think, in a really respectful way. I know it's hard to hear, but he's not there yet. If he works hard enough, he'll get there, or he won't. But either way, he's going to be okay. So I guess that respectful honesty was helpful to me at the time, even though I didn't like him when he said it to me, but it obviously stuck with me and it helped.
I'm gonna come. That's awesome, Alison. I really love that little anecdote there. I'm gonna come to you, Alan, for maybe some comment, because you're such a long time guy with working with young kids and everything. But I really love that part about trusting him when he says on or good things versus trusting him when he says not so pleasant things. It's the honesty is a real crucial issue, and kind of the best one of the best people I worked with at the NHL level was exactly the same, Emil Francis. A good man, a kind man, but an honest man, and we all respected that immensely. If you weren't playing well, that's what he said, and he didn't say it in an angry, offensive kind of way. It's just, hey, you know what? You didn't have your night last night. You weren't good enough. You need to do this. We need this from you. So I totally appreciate that perspective, Alan. Give us your thoughts at this point in time. Alan's one of our great whites, Alison, out in PEI.
Okay.
And we need your microphone on, Alan. Alan, we need your microphone on. Yeah. Oh,
Can I ask a quick favor?
You're still off there, Alan. Yes, go ahead, Alison.
Can I just let my puppy out? I'm sorry, I'm working from home. I'll be 2 seconds. I'm just going to tie him up. He's losing it. I'll be right back. So
Absolutely. Try to get your microphone on there, Alan. Oh, there we go. Okay. Great.
Tim, I have a question. How do I get if somebody wants to speak, where do you click on it? I'm looking.
It's down, for me, it's down in the bottom right-hand side. There are a whole bunch of selections there. It just says raise hand, and there's a little hand symbol there.
Yeah, like I'm clicking on this. Is that it?
No, that's the thumbs up. That's right next to it on my.
Yeah, I can't find mine. Anyway.
Well, just Wally, put your video on, and then just physically raise your hand. I'll watch for it.
Yeah. Well, Alison's gone, and
I can't see everybody, but go ahead.
And I really wanted Alan to speak, because Alison had mentioned accepting the fact that her son was not good enough, a blunt statement like that. And Al related a story to me when a player was cut from a female team, and he was offended by that statement. And I'm not, it may be brutally honest to a young person, a female national player, being told they're not good enough. But when you let somebody go or cut somebody, I think there's got to be an explanation for it, and that was with the women's national program. But I'll leave it with Al. Allison, Al's going to come on board. He's
on there, Wally.
Yep. I just wanted to
I'm on,
introduce
but
Alan a little more. So, Alan's coach Crosby when he was 4 and 5 years old, and many of the NHLers that had gone through his system have been coached the right way. I don't think anybody else in the country has been coached the right way, including your boy. And I'm going to let Alan talk to that because the way he's talking about is life skills first, hockey skills second, and dreams your third, accomplishing your goals. And you need a dream beyond the dream. So I'm going to leave that with Alan for you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, got you, Alan.
I'm on. I was thinking real selfishly on just watching because I haven't had a chance to be eyeball to eyeball with Dave King, who's been an unbelievable mentor to me, unknowing to him for the last 40 or 50 years.
Thank you, Al. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. And Allison, I just love what you did in the book. I didn't read it all yet, but the parts I read were great, and I got introduced by a cousin of yours to your book, and got a Christmas gift. Anyway, well, you know what? I think that dreams are important, relationships are important, and having a goal and dream is important. And if you care about people, they'll listen at any level. People need to know you care before they'll listen to you. And if you show them you care, they'll forgive you for mistakes as well. And I was a teacher, and I worked for a career with a youth and fitness department of education, and I've seen so many kids. Like I had a boy that had a problem at home. I just relate this recently, and he was a big 6'4" goalie whose family was split up, and mom was an alcoholic, and he was just in chaos, and but very bright, and he was in a dark spot for years. But I sort of looked after him, kept him in view, and all of a sudden he disappeared. And on the weekend he was working a night shift. He graduated from high school. He's working a night shift at the bridge, checking people in and out for COVID. And on his way home at 7 a.m, he sent me a note. Can I call you? And I got it an hour later, so I called him, and he basically said, you're leaving me, and that you're going to do something that I could do something great with my life. And he said, I just called to thank you. And he's going to study psychology in the fall. He seems to have gotten over a lot of those kinds of things, and his life seems to be a little bit in a better place. And so I think that those are the things, that the rewards that really count for me. And I don't know what, maybe you want to ask a question, but I hate to take the time of the great people that are on there, and I'd rather listen so I can learn something.
I just love what you said, and I think that speaks to the difference that you can make. So that conversation and how you helped that young man in a dark time in his life, and where his life is going to go now, and that you're the person that he called, that's what a coach can do. And that's the whole, when I talked earlier about integral and having somebody that is a good person and who isn't just there to make sure that these kids are going to get them to a championship, that they know the kids and they have a relationship with them as much as you can, or even just aware. You noticed he was in a dark spot. I've said when I've got out and spoke, if a young man or a young woman comes on the bench and they're not themselves, or they look a little odd, or something looks off, you don't have to become a counselor or a therapist in that moment, but you just have to have a background or backup, somebody that you can call to say, okay, I think something's going on with this person, with this young man, young woman, and we need to help them. And it's just having that awareness, I think. And that's just paying attention. That's just paying attention. That's not making it about yourself as a coach. That's making it about the kids. And that's just my 2 cents on that. So
I think that helping them with the dream after the dream is really important. And
yes.
when I bring kids in to talk, or when I talk to them in class, I try to get a lot of life philosophy in. And we had one boy from Newfoundland that come over, and we were able to send him to Upper Canada College on a scholarship. And he got drafted by Ottawa while he was there. His name was Colin Greening, and played junior A, and then he went to Cornell. And Ottawa wanted him to sort of come partway through his degree, but he stuck it out and finished his degree. And then he played 10 years in the NHL. And the last I heard that he was thinking about going back to Cornell to study medicine, which if we can prepare kids for the dream after the dream, that's really important and makes that transition a lot easier. Or, interject into their lives advice as to, well, what would you like to do in hockey? Would you like to be a manager, or would you like to be a coach, or would you like to do something else in hockey? But also there's all kinds of other things out there and that you can do. And we try to train them really young to get up on their feet and speak and do a lot of outside reading. But I'm going to finish with that because I want to hear you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Kim, you're next. Go ahead.
Thanks. I wanted to just share, I'm not sure if other provinces have this, but I know in Ontario, the OWHA, the Women's Association, offers free confidential counseling for players. I've had 5 different players who have had, various, challenges going on with them. Parents are divorcing, suicidal thoughts, and I've referred them to that confidential counselor. So I just send an email and they connect through text, and they never need to know who the person is. I don't even know who the person is. But the players have found it really, really valuable. So I'm not sure if different hockey associations have that available, but I know it's saved quite a few of my players, and been a great resource for me. So I didn't feel like I had to shoulder all of the load. I could sort of pass it on and delegate some of that responsibility. I'm not sure that's the right word, but I love what Alan said about preparing kids for dream after the dream, because no one's making millions of dollars in women's hockey anytime soon, so they don't have the dream of McDavid and Crosby money coming. And so for me, a lot of that is getting them to give back in coaching. So for me, I've got 4 of my former players are now head coaches at Leaside, which is something I'm really proud of. All females, and but I had a question. It's a little different than kind of the tone we're on. So I have taken up this new role with our organization just this year. Great year to do it. No hockey being played. We haven't been on the ice like at all. I can't do any skill instruction or evaluation. Perfect. But it has allowed me to gain or gather a lot of information. And so we did something kind of neat with our association. I created a survey for all the parents in our association. It got sent out to 1,500 people, and we had 400 people reply. And we asked them about the culture here at Leaside. So how do they identify our culture, and do they like it? Okay, so there's sort of 2 questions along those lines. And 85 to 90% of the people said, we have a supportive and encouraging culture. Okay, and they like that, right? So we've sort of got the check mark there of, the culture. We've created a culture that our customers, for lack of a better term, like. My question to you is, I've also been tasked with developing a high performance program. So I've coached in the AA, which in girls is the highest, in Ontario at least. I've coached in that loop my whole 12 years. I have a pretty good idea of what high performance looks like. And my question to you is, I don't know the answer to this, and it'll probably take 3 or 4 years to figure it out. But I don't want to lose that culture if that's what our customers perceive it to be, and that's what they want, while I develop a high performance culture. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I don't think they have to be conflicting. But I was wondering if you had any insights on that, on how do you balance that slightly different mindset, or is it a continuum? I was curious if you had any experience with something like that.
Oh, looks like we lost Allison's frozen up there. I can try to recall her. Let me text her email.
Kim, I just wanted to mention, I dealt with exactly what you're talking about in Calgary. Female Hockey Calgary has a separate mission statement from the minor hockey system. And there's no difference in the philosophy of why you coach or participate in an activity. In the one, the outcome and expectation is higher, but you don't accomplish that expectation without the foundational base of the life skills you're going to learn playing the sport. That doesn't mean playing totally for fun and carelessly. So in my mind, there should be no separation of the elite from minor hockey. And that's the issue. You asking that question means the issue is those people who want to get to the NHL or the national women's team don't understand the life skills that it takes to get there. And so there's really no difference in the mission and why you play hockey at any level. You may have higher expectations, but you still don't want recreational players to have bad life skills, to not work hard, to not want to improve, to be careless. So that's my own opinion on that question.
Well, and I
think
agree.
that's the reason for the problem that we face in minor hockey. Anyway, that's good. I'll leave that with you. Welcome back, Allison.
Yeah, Allison's on.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
I'm so sorry about that. My computer started to update, and it just went off on me. So as soon as it does, I'll come back on. But I can do it this way for now. So
okay,
so just if somebody asked me a question, I missed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Sure. So my question was, we've identified through surveys that our organization has what all our parents agree is a very supportive and encouraging culture. So that's how they identify us, and that's what they want. So 90% of the people in the survey said, we like this, we love the culture here. I'm in concert with continuing to keep that culture, developing our high performance program here at Leaside. So, that mostly being, the programming that we do for our AA teams, not necessarily anything different philosophy wise, but people are going to have certain expectations of quote unquote success, I'm sure, which I can manage from my end. But I was curious to your thoughts on that in terms of, I don't want to lose that culture. And I think a lot of hockey organizations don't have that culture. So I'm quite proud. I didn't create it because I just sent the survey. But I also don't want to screw it up. And so I was wondering if you had any thoughts about, that continuum, or those, are there conflicting priorities? Do you see it all as just part of the bigger picture when you're dealing with, players who have the dream at my level of playing for Team Canada versus the ones who are, playing at the house league level, for example?
Well, I think just back to that, in your culture, one of the things you have is counseling for the kids, and that it's completely confidential, and so you recognize that piece of it. And you started out by saying that none of in women's hockey, nobody's going to come out with the same contract like being a millionaire. So given that, they kind of go in with a healthy view of we need to have something after. So I think naturally, just the way you speak about it, the way you look at it, I think keep doing what you're doing is what I would say. And the fact that you have 90% approval speaks volumes. And I will say this, and I don't want to be negative, but there is always going to be 10% of parents at least that you're not going to get through to, and those are usually the ones that need to hear it the most. So, that's my thoughts on that.
if I could interject, Kim and everybody, it sort of comes back. I have been sort of waiting for a moment. It sort of comes back to, I think one of the things that and sorry to maybe some constructive feedback, Allison, and maybe it's not for you, it's more for BC or BC hockey, but in your lesson 3 video, I think you correct me if I'm wrong. You tell the story about Brock. I believe it's a 12-year-old, and I don't know if he was sort of a AAA guy at that time. I'm assuming so, but a peewee, and I feel like the video basically condones his coach for basically not giving him a developmental opportunity as the backup goalie in the playoffs. And that was the one thing in all those videos that kind of stood my hair on end a little bit. And it kind of gets, I think, to one of the points that Kim's making is, and Kim, correct me if I'm misreading, but I first wrote down, like, why should a supportive, encouraging culture be different in a high performance environment? It really shouldn't. But I get it from the point of view of playing time and organizational philosophy, and something we talk a lot about here. Wally can weigh in later about, shortening the bench versus managing the bench. And I'm a firm believer that at some point, and the question is at what point, at some point, it's important for kids like Brock and everybody else to learn that, it's not all about totally equal ice time all the time, all the way up. They need to start lessons, but at what point? So I'm not sure there's just a question in there other than the old one about at what point and at what level do we sort of grant some permission to coaches in minor hockey to short the bench or manage the bench. And anyway.
And you know what? You're so right about that video, and you're not the first person who has given me that feedback. And what we didn't do well in that is that video actually matches a story in the book in which Brock didn't get played for the playoffs. And what happened was, prior to going into, that was, I think, for a tournament, actually, going into that tournament, I went to the coach and said that he hadn't been sleeping well, and he was this and he was that, and made a million excuses for him. So when the game came, the coach didn't play him. So the frustration, and I was totally wrong to do it. My husband was working shift work, wasn't with me, would have never had that conversation with the coach. And so the way that was, did not relay that well in the video, and that Brock was upset that I would have even had that conversation with him prior to go in and see how I do. You didn't need to set that up for me in case I failed, was basically the idea of it. But we did not relay that well in that video, and you're not the first person to comment on that. So I thank you for the feedback. It is, you're right. Yeah.
I almost wish that BC, Hockey Alberta, I wish we could have a disclaimer sort of on that, added onto the video, like, for coaches to consider, because it certainly seems to give them, it seems I pictured a number of coaches sitting there thinking, yeah, see, I get to play who I want, when I want, and it's not up to you parents.
Right?
Yeah. And Wally, I'll come to you right next. I'll just share a point right on that story. When I was coaching the women at University of Vermont, I'm embarrassed in some ways about my coaching experiences over the past, but it's at an elite level, and one of the girls on defense wasn't getting played quite as much or as regularly as, of course, her dad would like, and he was sitting straight across the rink from the bench, and in a loud voice, so everyone in the rink heard more than one occasion, "Mel, it's okay, the coach is an idiot," yelling across the rink, imploring me to play her more. And she was mortified after the game. And she's a terrific person, and it kind of apologized. But the point obviously being, from your perspective, again, as a parent, like, consider consider your kids and their feelings and what they're going through. And it's not all about you as a parent. So pretty.
Yeah, and that's really the whole premise, right? Is that it was not my experience, it was his. But time and time again, I made it my experience. And I see that a lot. You see that a lot when you go into the rink, for sure. So I just need to say, now I do have a client this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I have about 15 more minutes. I'm not sure how long and I'm happy to hop on again. I don't want to stop this conversation. I'm loving it. I just didn't know how long we planned on being on the call.
Yeah, and I'll go to you next, Wally. Allison, briefly, terrific to have you on. And actually, any Thursday morning you want to jump on, feel free to jump on anytime you're free. You should be able to just join us. But I'll go to Wally next, and just let me know when you got to get off.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wally.
Allison, like we've been in tune on the ethical side for years. What Dave and I initiated in 1990 was precisely to deal with the dilemma of what we're talking about today. The Good of Game, the document that I sent you, is related to an activity that was initiated years ago. Dave, my concern, and this is to everybody, I first witnessed it in novice hockey in a fun game, Novice 7, and the double shifting of the best players when they were up 5-1, and addressing it with the coach who I knew because I coached him in high school sports. And word got to the president of the association, who told me to mind my own business. Now, that was criminal to me. Now, if I want to fast forward to a major junior team or even an NHL team, the art of coaching is managing the bench to get the most out of all your players, making them feel valuable and having a role. And that's not what's happening in competitive hockey today. The elite, the so-called elite players that want to get that ice time, that want to get drafted, are getting it for the sake of the outcome, and they may be developing bad habits, staying out too long. And I say manage the ice time by behaviors. If they don't stay out too long, if they disrespectful in their behavior in any way, then that's a sign to not to sit, not to play at higher levels. So where we're coming from here is what you've been through in minor hockey, and the problem you're trying to help out with is what I've been dealing with for 40 years, ever since we wrote the Goals 3 video script, which just never came to fruition. So it's not dead yet, but we're still trying to make it work so that the best players in the world are going to be the best people in the world. And even average players are going to be the best people in the world. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. I wanted to share that with you. Okay. And I did notice the absence, not like male hockey, a lot of the problems, I just want the female game and the emotional intelligence offered by coaching, that we've witnessed, all of us coaching women, young ladies, girls, and their desire to want to understand and know why we're doing things the way we do it. I think we have to really capitalize on that to a greater degree, and it will make the game better if we work together with them. I just hope we keep getting more women on that are going to provide a side that men do not provide, because we're just different animals. Barry, I see an inquisitive look on your face. Have you got something to add? Your voice, Barry, you're muted.
Yeah, no, Wally, I really appreciate listening to what's going on this morning. Again, my job with Hockey Alberta, I work with a lot of parents and a lot of kids, so just trying to take things in and writing lots of notes. So let Allison keep talking. We only have her for a few more minutes, and I've got to go to at 10. So thanks, Wally.
So go ahead, Allison, if you had something.
I think the biggest thing, and I think we're all saying the same thing, is that whether you are playing house league, whether you're playing at an elite level, whether you are a young man or a young woman, girl or boy playing this game, you can reach a level of success off ice from this game that is going to carry you forward in a healthy way if the parents would get out of the way and allow it to happen, and if the coaches will work towards doing it in such a way that it's not about being the coach of a winning team and forgetting about the kids. And I think that's the challenge. And I think if you can, I always try when I'm in front of parents, is that your kids can be so successful. And I don't mean by signing an NHL contract. They can be so successful from this game by being cut, by learning about resilience, learning about relationships, learning how to conduct yourself, how to have hard conversations. And all of that happens off the ice. And it is the best way to get them off of their phones, being active, doing all the things that we're trying to get our youth back to doing, and it will help their mental health. So there's so many things about this game that if we would get our heads around, not just trying to get them to be elite players, that we could be really, really pushing and promoting, especially in this day and age when we're trying to get kids healthier and back to simple things. And it's right here in front of us, and I think we're missing it. So you can get so much success out of this game off the ice that is invaluable.
Yeah, I'll come to you next, Kim. That all comes right back to almost where we started with Dave. I was going to point out, Allison, that sort of lesson number one for anybody that hasn't seen it is in, quote me if I'm wrong, but lesson number one is don't force your passion on your kids. They will find their own. And that's really what it's all about. Go ahead, Kim. Oh, you're muted too.
No, I'm good. Thanks, Tim. Well, that's good advice because I keep asking my 4-year-old if she wants to be a hockey player and she wants to be a hairdresser. So sad waste of talent. She's an excellent
Be the best
skater.
one you can be.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive, I keep telling her.
I have no use for it though.
She'll be fine. No, my question was actually my concern, and I know we lose a lot of players in hockey, around the ages of, 12, 13, 14, when they lose that love of the game. My concern is a little bit more on the coaching side. We get a lot of young female coaches who want to give back to the game. They're in their mid-20s, maybe late 20s. They played some college hockey, some professional hockey maybe, and they're, enthusiastic. They've been a female player themselves, obviously, and associations just love these female players.
Kim,
I'm finding a lot.
Oh, there you go. You cut out there just for a second, Kim.
Sorry.
Like 10 seconds.
Okay. I was saying that we have a lot of young female coaches who come in very experienced with playing hockey, not experienced with coaching hockey, unless, they're skills instructors at hockey camps. And I'm finding we lose a lot of those coaches quite quickly, mostly because they don't have a toolbox to use to deal with what I call the other stuff, like the parents and, we could say politics, all those things. So do you have any suggestions in terms of resources or things that can keep newer coaches in the game so that they want to be there? Coaches don't typically get fired in the female game, but they usually self-select out and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Well, maybe Tim did. He's waving at me. I'm not sure. But in the minor female game, I find a lot of them leave after a year or two. And it's not because they don't like the hockey piece. It's they don't like the other piece. So do you have any insights on that and how to empower those young coaches who are dealing with, issues with parents and the association, maybe even, and, the politics of hockey?
Well, I'll tell you, my son, he now coaches AAA here in Ottawa. So he has had to deal with the parent side. And we did a video series also with Hockey Alberta Ontario. So Hockey Ottawa. Basically, we did a series there, and he came back in. So it was a few years after our original series, and he speaks from the perspective as a young player who's now coaching. So he talks to a bit of that in that video series, and it doesn't cost anything. And I'm not trying to push my stuff. It's just it's enlightening because the first he's talking from a player perspective, then he talks from a young person coaching parents. And so there's not a ton of it in there, but there is some. There's 10 videos, and there's no charge, and they're right off the Lessons from Behind the Glass website. So they would be helpful. But I think really I don't know of any resource that really speaks to the parent perspective as far as what they can expect. Short of, again, when I wrote my book, I looked for stuff. I looked for other things that kind of spoke honestly to where parents are coming from and how they can be kind of messed up, and I couldn't find it, so I wrote it. So without trying to push my own stuff, it's the only resource that I know of to let them kind of have a good view of how parents can see the game in the wrong way. So I don't know if that's helpful. I think bringing them back to their love of the game, what they got out of it, and to hold on to that, stay strong, no matter how strong a parent is, to make sure that they're feeding the kids that same passion and what they got out of it, and that they're there to coach the kids. They're not there to make the parents feel okay about every moment of every game. That's not their job. So I guess to just reiterate that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. I was trying to get an opportunity to ask you what Brock was doing now. So he's coaching. What's he doing professionally, or is he professionally coaching?
Well, interestingly enough, he went into radio broadcasting. So this is just a little another lesson that I learned. So he went into radio broadcasting right after, and he went to school here in his hometown. And we have the Wellington Dukes here, and they're a junior A hockey team. He had tried out for the Wellington Dukes. He got down to being one of the last goalies, and he didn't make it. But the coach didn't call him back to tell him he had made it. And they announced the other goalie before Brock found out. And I was really upset about that. And I said, you know what, I wouldn't deal with that coach again, blah, blah, blah. When Brock found out that the other kid had made it, he contacted this coach and said, thanks so much for the opportunity. Good luck this year. He handled it very well. What ended up happening is Brock went into radio broadcasting after, and whenever the Wellington Dukes would play and Brock would call the game, that coach would give Brock the first interview.
Nice.
I think that came from the way he reacted. Had he reacted the way I wanted him to, I don't think they would have been friends. So anyway, he went into radio broadcasting and ended up working his tail off, and there just wasn't a lot of money in it. And now he just bought his first home here. He's 23, and he works in cars. He sells cars.
Okay.
He's in sales and loves it, and is doing well. So
awesome.
Yeah.
It's
Tim,
noon. Noon. Have you got a few more minutes, Allison? Do you have to go?
I can do about 5 more minutes, and then I will have to go. I just have to get ready for my next client.
Okay.
I can give you a
Great. Go ahead, Alan.
Timmy, before everybody leaves there, I had a letter from a staff sergeant in northern Alberta who is a graduate of ours, and he's trying to help the community. So he's mobilized all of the groups there, like fire department and everything, because of the suicide rate and the despair that's in the community. And Terry, I wanted you to hear this especially, and I sent Wally the letter that he can. I had him sort of digest it so it'd be simple and that he can pass it around. And if any of you can do anything to help that community in northern Alberta, it would be wonderful. This is a wonderful person from a great family, the staff sergeant, and he's doing everything he can to help the community. And I think we all need to pitch in and help. And anything we can do, sending. Whatever the letter is self-explanatory, and Wally will probably disseminate it to everyone there, so you'll see what's going on. Thanks.
Wally, if you send that out, I can probably get that to Colin Patterson with the Flames alums, and maybe they can get.
Yeah, the thing about it else, the letter came because the gentleman's relationship with Al and PI and the number of NHL players that have worked with, it was sort of initially I was going to pass it on to Cassie Campbell or Bob Nicholson, who I know personally, but it's one of those issues in Alberta, and it's a major issue where using the promotion of athletes in the mental health side of things, it's a no-brainer project that I will share the reduced email. So whatever any of you can do in your circle of influence, and it's something that the NHL could jump on, Hockey Alberta could jump on. I'm just not sure how to proceed with it because it's something everybody would want to get involved in. I will pass that on after this session for sure to everybody. It's about mental health and definitely the sport of hockey and the people in it being able to help out.
Okay, thanks.
I did send it on to Cassie, and she responded. She's going to do something with it.
Great. So sort of on that note, maybe Allison will release you from your obligations here. And again, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. And as I mentioned, like if you're sitting there wondering what to, if you got nothing to do some Thursday morning, I think you could open Skype and we'll be on here. We're often on for 3 or 4 hours. We're crazy. So
Okay.
thank you again so much. And there's all kinds of heartfelt thank yous popping up in the chat here. So I know everybody really appreciated it.
Do you mind passing on my email to everybody? And if anybody has questions after this, feel free to email me. As you take this back, and if you have any thoughts on anything, let me know. And I'm happy to respond. And I do counseling Wednesdays and Thursday mornings, but it will just go to Wednesdays in a couple weeks. So I will be able to hop on again. So if anything comes up, let me know. And thanks again. It was great to meet you all, and I really appreciate all your support with my message, and I wish you good luck with yours.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Allison. Really appreciate it again. We'll hopefully see you again.
Thank you, Allison.
Okay. Bye-bye. Okay. That was awesome. Nice woman. Anybody or questions or want to follow up?
I just related to Dave. Dave, thanks for joining us. David, I did an interview with Dave, and I've shared a deliberate interview because separating minor hockey, which would be, the Allison's conversation, Dave, I think she was in competitive elite AA hockey, getting drafted in the OHL where they're not drafted at Bantam, they're drafted at minor midget. So she's gone through it in Ontario. And Dave, in Ontario, Lisa Haley, who's coached with the national team, women, and she's now coaching Team Hungary. I talked to her yesterday about her experience having been with the national team and what she's learned from it, and working with Hungary and what she's learning from it. She is in the process of being a part of Hockey Canada's ethical coaching module, and I wanted her to join today. I do recommend everybody look at her links, but Lisa is doing what we did in 1990. That's her job, starting at Development 1, which I would say is the equivalent of level 2 or 3, because they're named differently. So I'm hoping to do another interview, Dave, maybe this week or early next week, where we could Zoom and you can talk about the competitive level of those serious players at the age they might be, whether that happens in Bantam AAA or Midget AAA or Major Junior, I don't know, and then going to university or the national team or minor pro. That interview, the second half of that'll be my next thing to keep me busy. Once we do that interview, I'll continue to promote the book, but target the high performance audience for sure.
Well, Wally, I think the question of ethics in coaching has always existed, and the problems that we're dealing with today are still the same problems we dealt with when I first started coaching bantam hockey in Saskatoon 43 or 44 years ago. So, it's sometimes you think you're spinning your tires, but I think it's really for all of us that are involved in coach education to always, when we make presentations, find time to talk about the ethics in coaching, because there's a lot of terrific young people out there that want to coach, and I think it's wonderful that they're so keen. And now there's so much information available to coaches that I think they can fast track their development very quickly in terms of technique and tactics. But one of the most valuable parts of coaching, and again, this whole group has it, is experience. Experience does allow you to get more perspective, usually more perspective on issues. And I find it often difficult at coaching conferences where everybody wants another drill or a new tactical idea. When somebody talks about philosophy of coaching or ethics in coaching, a lot of the coaches put their pens down and don't take any notes. And so I think that, it's an ongoing issue that we're always going to deal with, because, and Alan can speak about this because he's been involved for so long. Our challenge really is the fact that we're dealing with somebody's children, and children, that's your most important part of your life when you're a parent, is your kids. Wow. Yes, you think about yourself, you think about your wife, but you're really concerned about your kids, and you're concerned about them being happy. And so we all want sport to be a place where they can be happy and enjoy it. And when we sense that they're not getting it, even the most common sense person can lose that aspect and become difficult to deal with. So anytime you're coaching somebody's kids, it's a potential for a volatile situation, because there's not many parents that see the big picture and can put it all in perspective. It's just not the way it is. We worry about our kids, my kids. And so, all we can do is keep the voice. And I think I've read on Wally a lot of things that you've said that Alan Adams does out in PEI. And I like the fact that in coaching with children, that we're more concerned about the child than we are the player. And that's the thing we have to maintain in our coaching education programs, is to make sure the young coaches understand they're dealing with children, and so we have an obligation then to number one is to help them develop some aspects of their life that can go beyond hockey. Teamwork, working together, giving your best effort. Nothing wrong with losing, is not a problem. If you give your best effort, I mean, that's what more can you do? You can't do anything more in a sport than give your best. And so these are things that we want to promote. Trouble is, with coaching, it's hard sometimes for coaches to devote their time and to offer their and be a volunteer. Because sometimes if they don't win enough, they don't get invited back to volunteer these thousands of hours of time. So it's a real hard problem. But I think the number one thing is everybody that's in positions of influence is to continue to give the message that, think about the kids first, think about their welfare, think about their happiness first. What are you doing? What are you doing as a coach that has some effect on them after they leave the game? It's philosophical, but that's what we have to do.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree, Dave. I was just sitting here. I had this thought with when we had Cal Botterill on.
Yeah.
He was talking about perspective, and I just had the thought, and you certainly don't need to answer right now, but I had the thought that, man, I would love to touch base with I can't remember her name now, at the NHLP Coaches Association and or the coaches site, and see if they wouldn't be interested in having you and Wally do a little 40-minute presentation on, perspective and development and everything, just the way you're talking right now, that maybe could help spread the wave, so to speak, a little bit. I don't know if you'd be interested in doing that, but I'd love to sort of do some groundwork on that, because I think it'd be so terrific.
Yeah, Tim, I'm glad to be involved in anything like that. I think we all would agree, we don't have all the answers. We only have suggestions. There are possibilities. If the people who are listening to us can't embrace some of those possibilities, likely they won't change. But it gives them food for thought. A lot of our jobs as coaches, our players, our parents, whatever, food for thought. They're not going to digest it all right now, but they might look back later on and get the message. Sometimes it doesn't connect till they're finished playing our game. That's why it's a great game, because sometimes kids leave the game, but what we did help them with sticks with them, and suddenly later on, 10 years later, they get it. So that's important to realize that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just chatting there, like we've been talking about sort of asking questions as coaches, and one of the after transmitting belief as coaches, one of our main jobs is to stimulate curiosity in our players, and same thing for the coaches there. You can always lead the horse to water, of course. But anyway, I thought it'd be a great thing. Go ahead, Wally.
I just talked to Cal Botterill on the phone. Send him an invite, Tim.
Okay.
I said Dave would like to meet him again and join the group and catch in on the conversation. So he may join us shortly. I'm really happy for this. So Dave, is there a day next week or a time Friday setting up another Zoom call so we can do a second part interview with you? And
yeah, I'm really good next week. Well, I've got a lot of things on with Hockey Canada tomorrow, but next week is a good week for me, and so we should connect, and we'll do that for sure.
Super.
Timmy, just a point there after I listened to Dave. I think we have to be aware as coaches that we're helping develop the next line of coaches by the way we coach the children.
That's
And
right.
that philosophy rubs off, and if it's done and if discipline is done in love, it's a high compliment. And if you can involve the parents as much as possible to let them know what you're teaching and how you're teaching and what your philosophy is, then it helps a lot to involve that the whole group.
Yeah, I totally agree, Alan.
I've been trying to call Cal here. Wally called him a couple of times, so I'll maybe text him.
Okay.
Just says he's unavailable.
I might see if I can add him, but
Sure. Go ahead, Kim.
I just got an email from my manager who is he's got American and Canadian citizenship, and it popped up. It was interesting. There's a summit tomorrow, online summit, virtual summit with USA Hockey that's happening tomorrow and the following Friday. And it's, let me get the correct title, Game On, Empowering Women in Hockey Together. It's a virtual conference. So I'll just share some of the speakers: Jeff Jansen, Cami Granato, Angela Ruggiero, Julie Chu, a bunch of people from, the broadcasting side, Katie Stone, Brad Frost, lots of the stuff about officials and management. Anyways, I know we have some people who are in the women's hockey universe, but I'm going to be, it looks like it's from 3:00 to 6:00 tomorrow and the following Friday. I'll put the information in, but I do find, Wally, you can, you don't have to edit this out, but USA Hockey has some really good resources, and they seem to have been providing a lot throughout the pandemic that my manager has been forwarding to me because he has access to all of it. So I think this is a great initiative. So I'm excited. It just came across my desk like as Dave was talking. So I'll throw that in the chat.
Yeah, send us the info on that. Wally, you're muted. Wally, you're muted. Wally, you're muted. We couldn't hear you. Oh. Yeah, he looks like No, not yet. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Just ignore me. I'm talking to Cal as he's trying to join. So,
Oh,
okay.
okay. I was pretty sure I thought he's been on before. Like, ask him if his Skype ID is the picture of him with his dog. I'm pretty sure it is. Just ask him. I'm trying him again here. I'm assuming, Kim, that that's 3 p.m. Eastern, correct?
Yeah, I'm trying to sign up for it right now, and it's saying it's sold out or it's full, which I find interesting because it's virtual. But I am lying about what state I'm from since I'm not from a state. So maybe I'll maybe I'll lie. Maybe I still live in Hanover, New Hampshire. We'll see. We'll see. That was a long time ago. They're screening us Canadians. They don't want us in.
Kim, one of the things I wanted to ask you before, like when Allison was on, when you were asking about the high performance and environment versus culture versus the, I guess the minor culture. I mean, assuming you do, but does Leaside generally have a sort of a fair play philosophy? And you know, do you encourage or mandate any mentors you have? Keep the coaches accountable on the fair play front and sort of equal ice time, especially in the non-elite levels. But really, even at that level, you're still in the business of development, and really that should be sort of job one. No.
For sure. It's been fascinating. I know when I first started jumping on these calls, I think it was like the day after I took on this position. And I'm learning so much. It's fascinating because to be fair, it is very Darwinian. We've gotten where we've gotten, and it doesn't seem that anyone was necessarily steering the ship beyond the culture piece. I really do think that the fact that we have this supportive, encouraging culture that has been fostered within the organization. But everything else, it is a bit Darwinian. We are the biggest. We're in an affluent community in Toronto. We get, the parents, the families typically have lots of access to different opportunity, and many of them are successful in their professional careers as well. So I think we have this perfect setup in that we have, the culture, and we've got, people who are capable of, if we do want to ask a little bit more, say, extra ice time or extra something development on the high performance side, I think we can ask that. But it doesn't seem that someone has been implementing this stuff. And it's ironic because I've been coaching here for 12 years, but I've been basically given a carte blanche. No, I have no job description. I do now, but I didn't as a head coach. I wasn't accountable. No one was checking up on me. Now, maybe it's because I was doing a good job and they didn't need to worry about me, but my part of my pitch in pitching this job to Leaside is like, if you weren't holding me accountable as the junior coach, how could you possibly hold, to your point, the Adam Housley coach accountable? Not, you would hold me to a different standard perhaps in what I'm expected to deliver, but you wouldn't hold me to any different standard, to Wally's point earlier, and to add on to Dave's in terms of, my mission statement or the culture or the way I'm doing things. The what would be different. So I'm kind of, my job has gotten bigger and bigger. My pay hasn't yet, but the job has gotten bigger and bigger. And I'm a bit shocked at how, someone was asking me, are you going to establish best practices? And I said, I think I need to establish practices first. Like, we don't have any practices. So once I do that, then we will have best practices, hopefully. But no, it is, and we've had high, quote unquote, high performance teams for a long time. Those are the teams I've been coaching, but there hasn't been, again, we will hold those coaches to a little bit of a higher standard on the what that they do in terms of the mental, the video, the evaluations, the leadership opportunities, because again, they're mostly paid, and the parents expect their daughters are going to be involved 4 or 5 days a week. But that doesn't mean, we're not giving access and opportunity to the house league coaches. I know Wally's been on our on the Wildcat Way website, which is the website I created back in September, and everyone at Leaside has access to it. So players, parents, coaches, there's a lot of, I mean, I think it's half decent, but of course I created it. I'm a little biased, but to me, that's a great starting point, because I never want the message to be you're high performance and therefore you're better than someone else. Because I learned to play when I was 13, and I would have never been like if that was the criteria, you're not playing AA by the time you're 9, I would have never gotten where I got. So I'm very conscious of that, but it will be interesting to see if I can change this Darwinian way of doing things and actually establish something that's sustainable when I'm not doing it anymore, which is my goal. I don't want it to all rest on my shoulders.
Yes.
Kim, I'm just going to send you. Maybe I sent it to you before. It could be maybe just sorry, Wally, you're next. Just a jumping off point for sort of establishing some principles, guidelines, or whatever it is, best practices. The coaching cardinals thing document that Wally and I in the group kind of put together. Really kind of over time the last year. I'll just forward that to you again. But go ahead, Wally.
This is a question for everybody, but Kim and Dave are two people that have more or less talked about this. But I wanted to the biggest dilemma is shortening the bench. In minor hockey, I've seen it happen at Novice 7, and I've seen it happen in AA hockey, and it's the entitlement piece where they get more ice time, stay out too long, develop bad habits, and they might get drafted, and now they're a problem moving up the ladder. And it's not about developing those players to get drafted, which Allyson was wanting to do with her son playing that level of hockey. So at what point, and I'm going to give you an example that cost a guy his job in Strathmore coaching the Pee Wee #1 team. He rolled the lines all season, very good team, alternated goalies, but when they got to the final, provincial final, he played his best goalie. He didn't get the job back. So that's my question to you. Is that the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? At Pee Wee 1, is it the right thing to do at Bantam AA? Because I did it at Bantam AA, the same thing. Rolled all year, got to the final, and it was the final game. It just happened to be the best goalie got 2 back-to-backs. So I'm just wondering, at what point and what degree do you manage the bench to win the game and not destroy your team? Anybody's response? Rick, have you got any ideas on that? Because I know you've handled those situations before with a goalie in the max.
Well, yeah. The situation at the max you referred to is we had 2 goalies. One was considerably stronger than the other and ended up getting drafted. The second one didn't. We got to our semifinal game, and it was the lesser goaltender's turn to play, which we honored, and the other guy got to play in the final. That's a win-win. But I think a lot of that, Wally, and you know where I may go on this, is how you set up your team from the beginning. What you explain to your parents, to your players, right at the front of the year, how things are going to function, what your philosophy is, and prepare them for the possibility that in key games, in key situations, you may well go with the players that are going to give us our best opportunity. But it's not necessarily going to be the modus operandi for the whole season. There's not a right or wrong on this one. There's a lot of gray in the middle, and it's how you manage it, from the communication with all people involved down to the implementation. It's not a simple do it this way or do it that way. One's wrong, one's right. The middle ground is there, but you have to be fully honest with everybody right from the get-go, and then honor what you said.
Great, agree. certainly agree, Rick. Go ahead, Tom. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, I had that situation in 2018. We were in the provincial final with the girls. And of course, it's a tournament, so you got to, days with 2 games in one day and all this kind of stuff. So we ended up in the final against St. Albert. And I talked to both my goalies, and they agreed which one should play. Because it was the other one's turn, and she, the other one was a year younger. She was really nervous about playing. And she said that Cassidy should play, so we went with Cassidy. And I don't think either goalie, I don't think anybody felt bad about that because they made the decision, basically. If she would have said she really wanted to play, I would have played her. So it's never black and white, that's for sure.
Jordan, Wayne, do you want to weigh in there?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I agree with all the comments so far. It's always been, for me, when I was coaching minor sports, it was always about fairness, like not exactly equal, but fair ice time. So I would, alternate the goalies or roll the lines, but sometimes I may tinker with, lines or pairings, just to, put players in situations where there was going to be opportunities for them to succeed and to build confidence.
Jordan? Oh, I think, are you still there, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, picture.
No worries. It's I took you guys walking. I transferred computers and went to the workshop for a little bit. We're on teachers convention right now, so you're the first session of my teachers convention today, and then virtual ones after. But I also have a project that I'm working on, so I was listening in as I was busy doing something else. But yeah, this is a tough one. This has probably been my most difficult thing to try and balance and deal with, and why I ask the questions I do about working with parents, because I find that this is one of the areas where I've painted myself into a corner sometimes and stuck to my guns and been okay with my own decision on it, but it has also ended up in me not necessarily being invited back to coach a following campaign with a group with some of those situations. So the black or white piece is a difficult one, but I do know, obviously, with being in this group, that what Rick said is so important, and I would probably, going forward, use a mission statement exercise and those pieces. But I can use the example of when I was coaching Bantam AAA. I was very fortunate that the team that I had was extremely strong, and we could roll lines against every other team, and didn't have very much difficulty with it at all. Where I ended up with a issue with it with one parent was I pissed him off in the first 2 weeks. I didn't even know it, and it was what I did was I placed his daughter on a different line than she'd been on in the previous year, and she had been on a line as a rookie with probably the best bantam age player in the province, and so he was expecting her to be on that same line and rack up the point total that she was going to have, and I recognized early on in the camp process that she was also another kid that needed the puck on her stick, and one of those players. And so if she was playing with the other girl, she wasn't going to get as many touches. So I figured for her development, I'd move her around and moved her onto a different line, and where she could be a little bit more of a dominant player. And she had a great season, but her dad, he was had it in his mind that was not what was best for his kids. So it was one of those ones that I was banging my head against, I guess, all year long with it from that perspective. So I think that all of these things that we've been discussing today are great pieces of information, and just to carry on further with it. And I haven't printed Dave's quote from a couple weeks ago on a shirt yet, but I still I've shared it with several people about if you don't pay attention to the wins and losses as a minor hockey coach, you'll lose the right to donate 500 hours of your time, volunteer 500 hours of your time the following year, and so it's a dilemma that we're going to be dealing with for a while. So,
Tim, I think it's really a difficult scenario you're talking about because you're with youth hockey, and I liked Rick's comment. I think as long as you set the stage with people early in the season on some of those scenarios that do exist, I think that takes you off the hook a little bit as a coach. But the other thing is, when you talk about managing your bench, it doesn't mean that automatically it's to shorten your bench with youth hockey. Probably one of the most interesting comments that ever resonated to me was about 25 years ago. I was doing a coaching thing and a conference, and this question came up, like, what do you do when you're in a game with, you're leading by a goal, or you're down a goal? What do you try to do? And the guy, this coach, it was a smart answer. He said, well, I change my lines. If I'm down a goal, I'll load up my top lines. I play everybody, but I load my top lines with my top players and we go for it. But I play everybody. When we're up a goal, I balance my lines. I'll change my combinations, so I always feel I have pretty good depth on the ice in terms of how we can play. And so I thought it was kind of an intelligent way to do it. And then he said at the start of the season, he told parents that's what he would do. Don't be surprised in a close game, up or down a goal or two. You may see the lines change. This is why I'm doing it. I'm not going to shorten the bench, but I'm going to manage the bench. And I just thought it was a kind of a smart idea. And he didn't deprive a youngster of a chance to play, but he had those thoughts in mind.
Yeah, that's go Kim, then Wally, or then Tom, then Rick, and just to qualify, we do always clarify. Wally and I and everybody will always talk about that exact concept. Shouldn't be shortening the bench at lots of levels, but you can manage the bench in different ways, and that's a really great example of that. So go ahead. What did they say? Kim, then Tom, then Wally, then Rick.
Guys, I have to sign off. Sorry, I've got to go to a conference call, but I've enjoyed it today. Terrific.
Here.
See you, Dave.
I'll be on again. Thanks again.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
So my comment again on the female side is, I sort of, maybe because I came from playing, at a relatively high level, and I had this expectation when I started coaching that, I'd maybe been warned, the parents are going to expect this, and the kids are all going to want to play in all situations, and they're going to be jealous if they don't get out and all these kinds of things. And so I thought I would sort of cut them off at the pass. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to ask my players. This was Bantam AA girls, and I hadn't coached most of them before. I said, if you had a choice, like if you could only pick one, would you want to be on the power play or the penalty kill? You can't say, oh, maybe just pick one. And 80% of my players said penalty kill. I thought, oh, that'll make the power play effective. But it was interesting because I find sometimes with the girls, they don't necessarily want to be in every situation, or they don't necessarily see themselves as being the go-to player in every situation. And so I didn't use that to like pick my penalty kill and my power play, but it did sort of change my mindset of, can I give the players a little bit more ownership? Can I ask them, if I have a player saying, how come I'm not on the power play? Sometimes I'll flip it back to them and say, well, who should I take off the power play? Like, who are you going to replace? Right? Like, I'm just curious, right? But I don't do that all the time. That's usually a player I have a better or longer standing relationship with. But I do, ask for their feedback, and they know that I'm open to their ideas. And it took, that's one of the things, I don't know if I got it right, but I had the right instincts on that early on as a coach. And one of my, experiences, which was similar to what I think Rick shared, the goalies, is I I had a pretty good team a couple of years ago when we were rotating the goalies. I have one goalie who's way better than the other. One's a Hockey Canada goalie. The other one is playing university hockey, but I think she's a second or third. And we were rotating starts, and the not Team Canada goalie was supposed to start. And we were on a winning streak. We're doing well, and everyone's playing well. Like nothing, no reason to change the starts. And she comes to me before the game. And I said, "What's up?" She said, I want Kate to start today. And I thought, this is weird. Like, is there something? So I said, is there something going on? Like, I'm very focused on the players. There's something wrong. She goes, no, but her mom's here from BC and she hasn't seen her play this year. And I thought to myself, how dumb am I? I had dinner with the mom the night before, like, and I didn't even, like, as a coach, how come I didn't think of that? So this goalie, had that self-awareness to go, hey, maybe I should let this kid play since her mom is here from all the way across the country. So it's sort of kicking myself, being like, we celebrated in the dressing room. I said, obviously you guys are all smarter than me because, Letwin could figure this out and I couldn't put 2 and 2 together. But I, often in games, and I've never been in a position to win the championship in junior. Like I've never had the horses and the goaltending to do it. I'm just being honest. So every time I think about shortening the bench, I go, does this game actually matter? Because there are games that actually matter, right? You have to win this semi to get to the final. And that, every player and probably parent at the junior level say, you know what? Yeah, this game actually matters. And they might be pissed that you switch things up a little bit. But I would have, like you guys said that in advance. But, if we're in September and it's the Stony Creek tournament, like, what the hell am I doing? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, I operate from utilitarian principles. It doesn't matter to that kid. It doesn't matter from the team. It doesn't matter to anyone except for some parent in the stands. So that's the way that I've approached it. But I've been fortunate, I guess, with the players I coach and the age group and the culture we've created. I'm asking a 16, 17-year-old girl, what do you think? I'm not sure if that translates down in terms of less experienced or younger players, but it's been successful for me in that way.
Wally, I think, then Tom, then Rick.
Actually, I didn't have much to say except in the NHL level, Kim, the same thing happened. A good friend that Tim had skated with, Archie Henderson, playing with Washington, had come to town. They were in Edmonton the week before or the few days before, and I was looking forward to watch them play. They never dressed him. And I thought exactly what you're thinking. He's coming to his hometown, an opportunity, and he didn't get dressed. And I really felt that was that's not good coaching. And it's not coaching to win, it's coaching to lose. And he may have been one of your bottom 4 players, but goodness sake, the bottom line too is like the word transmitting belief comes out here, and that's at the NHL level. So emotionally, guys are going to have to take that. They might be tested to see how mentally tough they are, but it's all about the art of coaching. So I think, Tom, you're next. Go ahead.
I just want to share a conundrum I'm in. Okay. I've noticed that goaltenders are way more proactive in contacting me about their interest in playing. So what's happened is right now I have 7 goaltenders that have played AAA or prep, and 3 goaltenders that have played for me all want to play next year. And they've come at they didn't all come at the same time. So I got a girl that transferred from one of the teams in our league, and I never promised her anything. And anyways, my number 1 goalie last year, I thought she was going to Sweden to play. And then she contacts me 2 weeks ago and says, I want to come and play another year because she'd done her program. And then I had a goalie that played for the Fire there. And she was with us this year, but of course we played no games. And then a goalie that played before me 2 years ago went somewhere else, and then she contacted me and said she's coming back and registered at SAIT. And then 2 days ago, I get a email from a girl, and she's an elite goalie from BC, AAA. She's 6 feet tall, and she wants to come. But I've already signed 2 of the goalies, so I got room for 1 more goalie, and that's my conundrum. I'm trying to find stuff about the 6 foot tall goalie as much as I can. And the coach says she's great and all this kind of stuff, but I don't have much video on her.
I would say this really quickly, and we can go to Rick to go back to him, but the one that left and now wants to come back, I mean, you made her no promises. That's a choice she's making. So I don't think you're beholden to her at all. So for me, it would come down to, you know, the other 2, there's some loyalty there, even though the one thought she was going to Sweden, stuff happens. You know, I would say, wow, I mean, you can welcome her back and welcome the one from this year who didn't get any games because you made a commitment to her to bring her in last year, and she's still there. So you've got a commitment to her. The one that left and now wants to come back, no commitment there because you chose to leave. So make the best determination you can between her and the big one from BC.
Well, I signed one of the recruits, and Jordan, she played for that Raiders team, and the other girl played for Jordan, and they both had about the same amount of shots 2 years ago. And the one that was going to play for me last year let in twice as many goals and the same amount of shots. So I've already signed the one from the Raiders because she'd been a AAA number 1 goalie for 3 seasons. So I think I'm going to have to, I don't know.
Well, my thought is
the one I like the best is the one
Rick, well, if you've made a commitment to them, you've made a commitment to them. If you make a mistake, you know, you've made a mistake. But you know, if you've made a commitment to her, she hasn't even played a game yet. Like I think that's a tough goalie to let go. But you know, obviously everybody makes their own decisions. But you know, she chose to come.
Favorite of all of them as far as a person. She's the nicest person in the world.
Well, good teammate then. Maybe a great third goalie. Anyway, Rick, we can go back to that, Tom. Rick, go ahead on, you know, I guess nobody's ventured to say when to directly answer Wally's question. At what level, at what time do we sort of allow, you know, again, not shortening necessarily, but giving coaches the sort of license to shorten and or manage the bench a bit more. What level? But go ahead, Rick.
I just wanted to add, and I'll come back to your later question, but just on the idea of shortening the bench, I would think a lot of us have encountered the experience where you get criticism and negative feedback for the point of having the wrong people out at the wrong time, such as why is that guy or that girl on the ice in the last minute of a 1-goal game sort of thing. My answer to that is one of twofold, and it's usually the same thing. A, it was their turn, and B, how are they going to get that experience if we don't allow them to be put into those situations? So from a coaching point of view, you need to challenge your players. You need to let them experience what it is that they need to learn how to deal with, both in the game and beyond the game. I think it's good coaching just to tolerate the outcome, whatever it might be, in those situations. Put them there and let them find out what they can do, what it feels like. If they fail, then there's something to be learned from the failing. If they succeed, there's something to be learned from that point of view. So again, I've been criticized lots of times for having people in the wrong. I've had parents come to me and say, you should not put my kid in the game in these situations. And I doubt that I'm the only one that's had that experience. So in terms of when is the best time, I'll go back to my earlier comment. I think if it's handled right, it's part of the preparation. Certainly at Timbit hockey and so on, you don't want to be doing it. But once the player enters a competitive stream, it's time to start learning these lessons, and they've got to be handled properly, again, with full communication, parent and to the players as themselves, and judicious handling of it, and try to balance the scale in a different part of the game where you can balance up the ice time.
Rick, I agree with you. You really got a handle on things. I like the way you describe it. I would trust you to coach situations and make decisions because I know where you're coming from. When Dave shared the story at the coaching conference about this one coach sort of deciding to create stronger units and secondary units, I would have brought up the point you made. At what point will the other players get a chance to learn and develop? And do you get a chance to transmit belief? That's where the line of making that decision is the demise of a good team. And I think they're, like Dave talked about, continuums of coaching. Well, there's coaches who just plain old put their best players out too long all the time. They don't play a lot of players. They don't get a chance to develop, and that's all I'm concerned with. And what Dave described, that coach may be able to handle it to the point of everybody agreeing with it. But it's up to you to realize to what degree will that affect your team and the belief that you have in that team. It's going to lead to winning in the end. And it may be on the scoreboard, it may not, but more often than not, it'll be on both the scoreboard and what happens off the ice. So that's the art of it. And I think not everybody has mastered that to the degree that you have, Rick, I'm sure. But that's something we've all dealt with over time and had to manage over time. So, okay.
Thanks, Wally. So I'll come to you next, Jordan. So Rick, you said once the player's in a competitive stream. So how would you define that competitive stream?
Well, I guess certainly when you hit the AA level, even at the Atom level, when you're playing on an Atom 1 team, where there's a reasonably good talent level, and those players are, whether they know it or not, probably destined to carry into the AA and the AAA streams at some point. I think you start preparing them for the eventualities that they're going to encounter along the road. One of the things that always confounds me is when they pick the World Junior teams and the players are given that 6 o'clock phone call. And there's always more than one comment. This is the first time that player has ever had to deal with this. They've always been the gifted one, the chosen one who's never had to face that adversity. And I think that's a tragedy. They should have had to learn to deal with that well further back in their career, or in their experience in hockey and in life, that not everything goes your way, that sometimes you're going to get told no. And you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, on that note, Rick, I think I've told this story before, like when I was in Atlanta in the NHL, that exact same situation happened where really Don Waddell was the GM and he forced me to sit out who I thought was our best defenseman because he had an off game or two. He was a rookie and honest to God, he was our best defenseman through training camp, first 10, 12 games. He has an off game or two. Don just said, he's not ready to play this much. You need to sit him out. And I'm like, why? He needs to learn slowly. And I'm like, dumb me. I had to sit him out. I didn't have a choice. He's the GM. So I sat him out and basically just said, well, Potts, it might be good for you to, you've been off a bit last 2 games. It might be good for you to just watch a game or two. And he was never the same after that. And I learned way after the fact that he had never sat out a game in his life, ever. And so he was off for like the next month or 6 weeks, and Don ended up trading him to Ottawa, but he played friggin' 400 games in the NHL. He had like 130 points. Like he's a good player, but right on that point. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, and no, that's good insight there, Tim. And one of the things that I just kind of got a little bit off onto that topic, Rick, is that actually on the female side of it, it's even less. Like those girls that'll get right up to midget AAA, it may be the first time that they ever get cut is at the midget AAA level, because if you look at GHC, well, they have 2 Bantam elite teams. So you have 40 kids at that point. So it's the only place where they'll actually get pared down. And then you see it at the midget level, where they start to do the math, and the parents start to do the math, and they start looking at all of the programs around, whether it's Carla's Edge program or the Raiders program. And I said to Jamie Martin, I said, GHC is actually looking at this wrong at the midget level. I said, need to be saying to those at the Bantam level that instead of them saying that GHC needs a second midget AAA level team in the Alberta League, they need to go and say, you know what, there's actually 3 teams in this area that we should be trying to get as many of our GHC players on as we possibly can. Yes, of course, the Fire team should be all GHC players if it can be, but try and get as many on Carla's team as you can, and try and get as many on Okotoks team as you can, and show that your development is the best in the area. But that's a different one. Train of thought that I went on because of Rick's observation there. But back to what Dave King was talking about, it reminded me of what Daryl Belfry said when he was on. There was something that I had to digest and think about later, when he was talking about that associations or leagues should have policy on how players can be utilized, and talking about best players playing against best, and that you shouldn't be line matching and some of those things. And I don't know that that's ever possible, but I know that when I was managing the bench, that I didn't look to line match my forwards. What I always tried to do is make sure that my top pairing of D were getting more reps against their top offensive players. Of course, it's still cycling through your players, but you're wanting to make sure that when push comes to shove in those real important times, that your top pairing of D is probably out against some of those more offensive players from the other side. But that was an interesting observation of what Daryl had said versus what Dave had said, and I'd be interested in what Dave's thoughts on that would be. And Daryl's book just arrived in Amazon, so I guess I got some reading to do, Kim.
Yeah.
To you. And then Tim, another book from Amazon was from your CBC suggestion to me about the disruption in education to do with technology.
Yeah.
I actually read half of it online already. But,
okay, cool. I'll be interested to hear what you think, because I haven't actually got that myself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting ideas what he's saying about it, and it's led me down a different path in a couple of other futurist speakers about way we're changing behavior in society and things like that. But.
Cool. So I wanted to interject, and I'll come to you, Wally. This is obviously an ongoing, very long discussion, and it's a difficult discussion, like the one about sort of at what level do kids need to start learning about it's not all fair and equal, and at exactly what level. I mean, I sort of, we batted this around a lot, and I sort of kind of come to the and I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying, I'm just offering it, like, really, Bantam AAA guys, starting with the male side, they have some potential to go to the Western League. the next year. And they are for sure going to face that in the Western League. So that level, for sure, I think coaches can have and need to have that tool. And again, shorten maybe occasionally, but certainly manage. And there's still a balance that needs to be struck there. Maybe, as Wally's always said, the first half of the year versus the last half of the year. And I think that you could say, okay, Bantam AA, they might want to be playing Bantam AAA next year. So where do you start that sort of domino process? But I think I'm sort of arrived at, really, it's Bantam AA, AAA. Like, you should not be robbing even a Pee-wee AAA player of ice time and development opportunity, because it's just way too early. But I totally agree. They need to learn that skill, if you were, to be a good team player, role player at some point. On the female side, kind of on Rick's point, I kind of think it's more at the midget, AA in Ontario, AAA or whatever here in Alberta, at that level, because they've got to prepare those kids for university, and it's going to happen at that level. It's going to happen, and the kids need to be prepared for it. But those are sort of right now my dividing line, sort of Bantam AA, AAA for guys, midget AAA for the girls. But again, it's just a thought, and it's a fraught subject. Wally, you're up, then Rick.
I got to slide off here, guys. I've got to go to a different session, an actual session. So thank you again for a great morning.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Thanks for joining. Go ahead, Wally.
Yeah, to my point, Belfry talked about how embarrassed he was about his coaching minor hockey. And I'm going to exploit that moving forward with this debate. And in every session, at some point in time, I'm going to edit Daryl's portion where he realized a parent can't look him in the eye today because of the way he coached them when they were in minor hockey. And that question, at what age, to me, the art of coaching, it's the same with Toronto or the Flames. I had 2 emails last night from respected, educated hockey people about the Flames' management of the bench and their decision to decide who the elite players were that were going to play together and get the ice time. That's part of the art of coaching at that level. Learning to adapt to not getting ice time, giving ice time, that's an art. That's why you coach. And what Rick does in his way, to his satisfaction, he can do. And if I'm in Kim's position, I'm assessing how much is too much ice time, how long is shift lengths are they taking, are they being double shifted? And that's what I believe Daryl was doing to a noticeable degree. And that's sort of when he was embarrassed and brought that up, and now he's working with the best of the best in the NHL. It's just great to have a guy like that speak to his experience in minor hockey, and much more experience and knowledge than most minor hockey coaches. In fact, he was the head of his association, in like Kim's role back in his younger days. He was doing what Kim is doing. So, okay, Rick.
Okay, thanks, Wally. Just back to Tim's point. I mean, point of clarity, I wasn't suggesting that at Adam 1 hockey you should be shortening the bench. I was referring more to managing the bench, where the occasional shift or the occasional situation would warrant jumping out of your normal rotation, which all players kind of get into the feel for. And as soon as you adjust that, the eyes come up and see what's he doing. And in a perfect world where everybody had ethical coaching and nobody was shortening the bench, the idea of restricting it to just the upper age levels and the upper high competitive levels would work. But in the real world, we know that all coaches at all levels are going to be practicing this. So I think the earlier you condition your players to deal with that, the better off they're going to be through the whole process.
Rick, do you trust all coaches to do that?
I don't trust all coaches to do that. It's if we get in a situation where we can mandate ethical coaching and hold them accountable to it, then yes, I agree. But right now, we don't have that situation. We have never had that situation.
Yeah, that's precisely why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is
yeah. When we get to that point,
yeah,
and I'll take a positive glass half full point of view there. When we get to that point, then I think we can say, okay, you are not permitted to shorten the bench or even manage it significantly until that level. Until then, I think you're doing your players a service by giving them tastes of what's coming, of what may happen and how to deal with it. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I think it's another module, the art of coaching, and talking about managing the bench versus shortening, because I have some cardinals for losing ice time and some cardinals for rewarding ice time. And they are related to behaviors, respect, life skills, what's good for the group. Nothing else, not the score clock. Because too often, and what Dave has witnessed and his son Andy in AA hockey, they just refused to play that level because of the entitlement that was going on and the behaviors that were going on with a group of kids that were being coached to win, and they weren't winning. They were losing on the ice and off the ice, so they weren't learning those life lessons. And that's why Brock's story with Allyson is amazing, because when I looked at her 10 sessions, I feel they missed the boat. They're dealing with the problem reactively. Well, how do we get parents to accept this? Yeah, it's about adversity. And the abuse is going on. And talking to Lisa Haley with her son playing Bantam AAA in Ontario. People that own the team own it because they have kids to get more ice time. That's happening. So there's, for her coming on and doing the story, and for Hockey Alberta and Hockey Canada to bring it on, kudos to them, but deal with that side of coaches growing up and the way they coach and being aware of why they're coaching, how they're coaching, and the effect it's having, as Dave said, on the young people. And in the end, you're going to build better hockey players, you're going to build better people. So it's all really good stuff. And Kim, what time is that USA hockey thing with the ladies?
It's at 3:00 tomorrow, but I tried to register and it booted me out. It said it had a waiting list. So I emailed the head honcho at USA Hockey that I know and said, are you just screening me because I'm Canadian, or is there actually a waiting list? So I'll let you know what she comes back with. But
yeah,
it's 3 to 6, I think, on this Friday and the following Friday as well.
Yeah.
I looked at it too, Kim, and it didn't look like they allowed anything outside USA. There was no provinces for residence locations.
Yeah, well, I'm going to see if my manager can register. Maybe that's the challenge, but we'll see.
I was gonna say in hindsight, this doesn't help Lisa now, but I mean, it might sound a bit cruel, but she maybe should have considered allowing her sons to play on a team that was owned by some of the other players' parents. Can't always control that, and whenever there's that situation, obviously there's certainly a lot more likelihood that, unfortunate stuff is going to happen. They're at a level now where it's sink or swim, in my view. Bantam AAA.
Yeah.
And Allison's, one of her main points is still the most salient one, is that parents simply, and I'm sorry, I'm not a parent, so I'm pointing a finger. Parents simply are not capable of being, not many are capable of being objective about their kids' abilities and where they fit into the team. She appreciated their brutal honesty from the goalie coach, but she even said herself, like, I just couldn't have this perspective until it was all over. When I was in it, as her husband said, she was the crazy hockey mom when she was in it. And that's the real nut of the whole thing. And again, I can't speak to it. I know my two cats are the best cats in the world, but and they're even better than Wally's cats. But that's the nut of the problem, is the whole perspective thing and the whole grounding thing, and the love and the protection everybody has for their kids. It's a great thing, but it's obviously a problematic thing.
Well, this may be off the wall for all of you. Coaching is no different than parenting. I think I know it all. And I think this group opens us up to learning, and that's what it's all about. And I think I feel very strong in what I do, and Rick feels very strong what he does, and Tim's got his opinion. The bottom line is just making sure that the kids benefit from it. If it's dealing with adversity and learning that and doing it in a good way, I'm good on it. And I just don't know how many people can do it, and I don't know how do you educate people to do it, to have that feel, that sense of feel, but appreciate the harm that can be done with young people that quit playing a game when they're 13 or 14. They survive, they go on, they'll do well. But I think that's the essence of it. So it's all good stuff. I'm not going to coach anymore ever, but I just want to make sure that what we wanted to do in 1990, it doesn't go through the cracks much longer. And it likely will. The problem will be recycled. And Kim, you're in the trenches now, and you're going to deal with it, because you're going to go through everything with kids playing, and now not coaching, but being able to be that eye in the sky, that mentor. And I really like Dave's chapter, Apple Pie in the Sky. That's the most important chapter to reread in your situation, because it's a great chapter.
Well, I brought the hockey player here. Natasha, tell them what your two favorite things are. You going to tell them?
Come on.
No? You want to say?
Natasha, what's your favorite thing? Your absolute most favorite thing?
Tell Tim what your favorite thing is, babe. She tells me every day, Mommy, my favorite thing is skating and hot chocolate.
Ah, so she's not the hairdresser?
No, this is the hockey player. This is the one who puts on her, she calls them, what do you call them? The fighting gloves. She puts on hockey gloves. Like, Daddy, can I have my fighting gloves? Mm-hmm. Well, no, Wally, it's interesting what you say about the parenting, right? Because now I haven't parented that long enough, I guess, but thus far. And there's this prevailing, like warm and fuzzy, and, everyone gets a trophy and everyone's entitled and everyone's a special flower. And now I married a Russian, so that is clearly not happening in my house. But we are rare because of that, right? Like everyone's micromanaged, the parents are there at everything. So if that is the same as what coaching is now, I think we're in trouble, because those kids come to me when I'm coaching. I haven't coached them before, and they have no management skills. They have no ability to deal with adversity. They certainly wouldn't have ability to deal with, making a mistake or getting the bench shortened. So, I'm not saying I can change parenting, because I can't, but is it then the job of the coach to start to instill some of that if it's not happening at home or in society? Because that's what I've seen, the big shift in
Good
the 10
point.
years or
Good
12
point.
years I've
Yeah.
been coaching. It's
Yeah.
very different. The kids are very different that I had 12 years ago that I have now. Still elite, still great hockey players, still driven, still the kids who are getting 90% in school. That hasn't changed. But their ability to deal with things because their parents have just handed them everything or given them everything on a silver platter, like they just don't have the coping and management skills that they should have. So that, is that then our role? Like, I'm never going to be able to undo what a parent's doing the 22 hours of the day they have the kid, and I only get them for 2. But is that, like, should I then take up that mantle? I know I'd be fighting against what's acceptable, at least on the parenting side of things. But then at least I can say I've given that kid some tools that she can then go out and use, if she's playing college hockey or beyond, because I know when she gets to university hockey, there's not going to be any of that warm and fuzzy unicorns and rainbows.
I'm gonna say, yeah, I think absolutely it is your job for that exact reason. If you're, if we're talking about your double A team where the girls are going to go on to play university, in some ways, parents be damned. You know what your players need to play and compete and survive at the next level. I think that is your job to, in a very calm, thoughtful, and supportive way, try to help them understand. You know what? You're going to go to Mercyhurst next year, and you ain't going to see but 3 minutes of ice time a game. And I want you to be ready for that so you can survive that and then grow to be the best player you can be. I totally think that's your job at that level, or part of your job, irrespective of what the parents think. And that's why I guess it's so painful in some ways to coach at that level, because they just, as Wally often says, they just simply don't get it, or lots of them don't. I shouldn't use the broad brushstroke there, but yeah, I think it is part of your job. And so just in that deathly silence there, as I often am good at invoking, I'm not sure why, but I've got a couple of Zooms with my Danish girls coming up here, so I got to jump off. Just doing some sort of exit interviews with the D from the camp. I got about 6 or 8 more minutes, and I got to jump off. Go ahead, Wally.
Tim, this is for Kim. I think that's the main job. The hockey side of it, we've assumed teachers are assuming the role of parents. They're doing things the parents can't do because you spend more time with them. You will make, you are spending as much time with those kids. A good coach is going to have a greater lifetime influence on them. So the ability to communicate with parents, coach the parents, as Dominic Pittis said, about the X's and O's which they might be questioning. And like Rick said, just communicating with them about the entitlement, the earned ice time, the rewarding of it, and the taking it away. And they need to learn that. That may be the only. So coaches and teachers are playing roles far greater than the subjects they're teaching.
Well, and to that point, Wally, I haven't had an issue in this in a long time. And so it's always interesting to me because now I'm officially the mentor for our other coaches, but, I've been unofficially their sounding board for many years. And they're the ones coming to me with these types of issues. I had to, I shorten the bench, or this dad's complaining, or this mom's complaining, blah, blah, blah. And it's been so long since I've actually had that happen on my team, because I cut everything off at the pass. And, we start it right at tryouts, and we have meetings with everybody in the room, and we did our mission statement exercise this year, and I shared it with, everybody on the team as well as the parents, because we couldn't have them in the room because of COVID. But I don't have these issues anymore personally as a coach. But I think that also comes with experience. And I look at these younger coaches who don't have that experience, and maybe that self-awareness or that confidence in themselves, say, this is the way I do it. Here's how we're going to do things. And they're looking for more guidance on, how to manage these types of situations. So I take it for granted because I've been doing it so long. It's always illuminating to me, because it's been a while since I've had, a parent say, oh, how come you didn't this or that or the other thing? I don't think I've had it. I maybe had it twice my whole junior career. So 7 years a junior, I might have had 2 parents ask me about it, which is a pretty low amount, I think.
Yeah. Rick?
Well, I was going to ask Kim, now you say you haven't experienced that in the last few years. Can I ask why that is? Like, what is your process for getting the parents on side? Is it, well, I'll let you answer. I won't give you suggestions. But.
Yeah, I typically, so we usually would have tryouts in April, and I would have a meeting with all the players and the parents at tryouts, and sort of explain to them, well, I mean, I think I do a good job in the recruiting process of giving people a very good idea of who I am and how I run things. So I have in-person meetings with all the players and parents before I'll commit to them. So, and you know how I love to talk, so they're usually pretty long meetings. But I think they have a pretty good idea of who I am and what I'm about when they leave that meeting, before they come to commit to the team. And so I've clearly communicated that to them before they even commit, right? So, they know I'm not a win at all costs. They know I'm not, wanting talent over character. Though I've already crossed that off, right? And then I have this meeting in, Natasha. I have this meeting in April, and I reinforce it with everybody in the room, which I think is critical, because once you say it in front of everybody, no one can say, oh, well, Billy said this, or my dad said this. It's like, you all heard the same message. And, and then it's reinforced. I'm not a coach who hides from everyone, but I think because they know I have 3 small kids, they also don't try to take up as much of my time as they might have before I had children. So the parent group is quite respectful of how much time I put in, and not overstepping their bounds that way. But it really is in that initial meeting of the player and the parent together in the dressing room or the Tim Hortons or whatever, and saying, this is who I am, this is how I operate. And I think, Rick, the nice thing I have is I've been doing this long enough, and I drive an orange truck with my company logo on the side, and everyone here knows who I am, for better or for worse. There's no surprises of what you're going to get with me. And so I think I self-select even before the recruiting process. I think there's a lot of families and players who would never even contact me, because they'd say, oh, well, Kim's not always trying to get the best players, or she's not going to win the championship. So they just self-select out, and I don't want them anyways. So I think I've curated, a group of families, and sometimes I get lucky and get that kid, like, Wally and Tim said in the video, like that super elite Team Hockey Canada kid, who just fell on my lap because she met me at a hockey camp and just loved me, and the mom loved me, and then she played for me for 5 years. And so, sometimes you get lucky, but that she came to me because of culture. We happen to have a great team as a result of her being a part of the team, but she showed up on my doorstep because she liked me and the way I talked about the team. So that's my advice to the young coaches, is you've got to know who you are and what you're going to do before you go into that initial recruiting. And you have to tell your story and sell your story, and then you have to stick to it, right? And so I think that's way before you get to a playoff game and you switch the goalie starts. They should already know 8 months before that, kind of your philosophy on those types of things. So I think that's just how I've always approached it ever since I started coaching.
Well, I thank you for that. And that is actually more or less my approach. That's what I've learned to do, is to get out in front of things, lay it all out, get the communications there, make cover most of the known normal situations that may arise and how you're going to deal with them. Whatever codes of conduct and rules and time commitments are involved, all that's discussed up front. And that pretty much puts it to rest. It doesn't exclude it entirely, but it minimizes the number of interactions you're going to have in that area. So thank you for that.
Well, I think it's interesting too, to your point, a lot of, again, most of my experiences in mentoring the paid coaches, the non-parent coaches, and they're so caught up in, okay, like, what am I going to do for my power play? And how do I do this? And what kind of off-ice training? And they don't spend time on this up front. So they're putting up fires. And so they kind of say, oh, well, this dad called me again and this and this. And it's like, well, talk to them now. Because if you don't talk to them now, it's not going to get any better. Like, you got to deal with it, right? Like, whether, 24-hour rule or whatever it is, you have to cut it off at the pass. And I think they get caught up in the things that don't matter, like your drills and your systems, because they don't know that doesn't matter, because they're new. And then they're putting out these horrible fires in October. I'm shocked by October how many teams have completely disintegrated. I'm like, didn't we just start? What happened? But that's because they didn't spend that time in September. So you invest that time up front, and then you're going to have a relatively easy way the rest of the season.
I think Dave King alluded to that in one of his comments, where at clinics, everybody wants drills and tactics and stuff. And as soon as you start talking about the ethics of coaching or some of the intangible things, the pens go down and the minds go blank, and they wait till you get back to the interesting stuff, unfortunately. So I'm glad we're on the same page on that one.
Oh my God, I think I have 1,200 drills in my drill draw. Like, please, no more. I need less ideas, please. That'd be great.
I just, Kim, you have open boundaries, so you know parents and kids better before you select them, and you can deliver on what you select. The similar lesson that I learned about having the control to do what you do in your environment. You're subject, most coaches are subject to the whims of the association. And that's where how you deal with things is critical. Now, I'm citing an example of Patrick Grameyer, the head coach of the men's team, University of Ottawa, creating a new team, starting a culture from scratch. He recruited nothing but junior A captains. He got a few major junior graduates, and he's winning games. Really quite an amazing achievement. And when I went and watched his team play, he had a player come up to him after a game he played. He had gotten a goal on the power play and an assist on the power play. He said, Patrick, I never, in 4 years of major junior hockey, played one power play. And that to me is a symptom of the degree to which at that level, the shortening of the bench, not realizing how good they could be and might become, they shortchanged them. So I really identified with that and sort of everything we're talking about here. Wayne Andrews, are you still here?
I am, Wally. Actually, I was just taking some notes here and listening in. I've got a few comments. There's some great discussion so far today, as always, and I'm always very appreciative of the learning opportunity and being able to be involved on these calls. I guess first comment is I agree 100% with Natasha about hockey and hot chocolate. Those are high on my list as well. So I really enjoyed that. Kim and Rick, what you were talking about with, the importance of developing a coaching philosophy and communicating that, just again, the importance of communication with your parents, with your team, that is so important. And I think so many problems can be avoided just with that good communication, like having that philosophy and then communicating your philosophy and your principles and values and rules, expectations for the season. You lay that out early. A lot of issues can be avoided. I also just want to make a couple comments about the ethics, the coaching ethics, and I'm really hopeful that I think we're on the right track here, and I'm hopeful that there's going to be some good developments in this area, kind of going forward. Like I do a lot of the Hockey Alberta coach clinics, and I facilitate a number of those clinics, and there's a lot of really good discussion around this topic now. So I'm hopeful that some of the coaches that are starting to come up through the system, are paying more attention to, to this area on coaching ethics. One of the exercises I do as an icebreaker and kind of early on in in a lot of my coaching workshops is I get the coaches talking about their favorite coach. Or their favorite coaches, regardless of sport, and what was it that made that person such a memorable and favorite coach. And I would say, roughly at least 80% of the time, coaches will share information about their favorite coaches, and it's always about characteristics such as that they were caring, they were positive, they took time, they were showed genuine interest in them. Rarely is it about their technical and tactical knowledge. So something I always try to emphasize in the clinics is you're going to get a lot of information on drills and practice planning and technical and tactical preparation and so forth. But one of the most important things, or the most important thing to take away, is that these kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's so important to get to know your players and as young as kids, and to build those relationships with each and every one of them. So yeah, I'm very hopeful that some of the discussions I've had in the coaching clinics in the last couple of years here, that there's a lot of coaches coming up in the system that are hopefully very focused on this area.
So Wally, I wanted to let you know I have an interesting session coming up Tuesday night. I've done this survey now for the organization, and it was sent out to all the families. So some coaches replied with their feedback and their insights, but it wasn't sent explicitly to coaches. So what I've decided to do, just because I think it needs to be done, is this coming Tuesday night, I'm going to do a feedback session with the coaches. So it's going to be all of the competitive coaches to start. We're going to split them in 4 or 5 groups. And I've asked some of the other coaches to volunteer to run the little groups. So I'm going to kind of give questions. I like to operate under the keep, start, stop kind of mentality. So what should we keep doing? What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? And the lady who helped me put together the survey does focus groups for a living. So she's going to help me put together the questions for the coach feedback session. But I'm really hoping that I get honest answers, because I think while our family survey paints a very rosy and lovely picture, I don't think our coaches are going to agree with that rosy picture. And so I'm really I'm excited for it. I hope they're honest with me, because it doesn't matter to me. I just need the information so that I can help develop them and support them going forward. Have you ever done anything like that? Kind of more like an open discussion, criticism?
Well, preceding that, I'm asking you the question, have all the coaches answered the first question of a mission statement? What do you want to accomplish from this season? 3 things. And we did that in Cochrane, and only 4% of the parents responded. This was to parents.
Right.
And I think doing that will get you to talk about the values piece at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, you're putting the cart before the horse. The horse is going to be, why are you coaching? Why are we doing what we're doing? Now you're going to keep, start, stop. Do you get what I'm saying here? Is that in my mind, from my experience over so many years, is that just making sure they know where they're coming from. And you can do it by keep, stop, start, but some of the start and stops may not be as easy to do or to buy into without a common philosophy of what your association represents.
Well, and we're going to be doing that in the fall. Like I have every
Yeah.
intention of doing the mission statement and all of that, but this is,
For
you know,
now, now.
because this survey was, fact finding. How do you see us? What do you think we're doing well? What do you want more of? And the reason we sent the survey out was because I need to know what to focus on. I can't change everything, but I also don't know if I needed to change everything, right? All I know now is based on the survey, I want to amplify the culture because they love it. So let's blow it out of the water. They want a little bit more centralized player development, like from Lee side, by Lee side. And the coaching experiences and expectations and processes are inconsistent. Those are sort of the three takeaways for me. But I had intended, even before getting that survey back, to say to these coaches, because we don't retain them that well. It's no different than player retention. Why are we losing coaches? Why are we losing some of our best coaches? Why are we losing some of our best female coaches? Either they're no longer coaching or they're going to other organizations, right? So if you're going to another GTA organization over here, why are you doing that, right? What are we not doing? What do we need to do more of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So like I said, I don't think it's going to change my mind about the core things like mission statement that we need to do. But I do think I need the information. I guess I'm just not sure. Like, I don't want it to, as much as I want the information, I don't want it to devolve into like everyone just bitching and complaining. Like that's why I sort of thought the keep, start, stop
Good
was
idea.
a good way to approach it.
Great idea. Really good. Yeah.
But I think I'll ask you guys, and then a little more specifically then. So I've got, let's say I'm doing 5 rooms, right? 5 breakout rooms of all these coaches. So there should be about 5 people per room. And I've had 5 people volunteer to run the room. So I'll say, okay, guys, what should we keep doing on blah, 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 or keep, start, stop on this. And then they will go into their little breakout rooms and they're in charge of leading the discussion and writing it down on paper. So they can come back to me or back to the whole group and let's share our ideas and then go back out. And ironically, I don't know how it happened. I sort of had a volunteer from each age group. So I had a volunteer from U11, a volunteer from U13, a volunteer from U15, and a volunteer from U18. If you guys were in my situation, would you mix all the coaches up? Would you have them in their age group? Because there's going to be different, things that might be more apparent or relevant for U11 coaches than they are for U18? Or would you just put them all in a blender and see what comes out?
I would say half ice. The U8, which is half ice, separate, and the whole ice, because the score clock's on, all at once. Next year for sure, if you did this exercise. Because the point of it is, I think they're going to play. They're playing whole ice. Their concerns are going to be related to the X's and O's more than the emotional intelligence of coaching, and that way, it's almost like 2 separate questions for the groups. The big question in the debate is the system of forecheck and assigning positions and not letting them free play and read 1, 2, 3, 4 when it's 4-on-4. And then going into pro hockey, and I recorded a 15-second clip the other day of a coach talking about 5-man hockey versus 2D and 3 forwards. It begins at that younger level, and it continues to the level you're working with, because they may be coming in with knowing the systems and pushing and telling them what to do. So in terms of keep, start, stop, there's a degree of forward thinking here that they may have the habit of doing things the same way and want to do it the same way. And even at the NHL, I still see 2-3 hockey. I think they're going down the tube compared to what these kids might be able to do when they go up the ladder. So that's just myself coming through. I don't know, Rick, do you have anything?
Yeah, to the question, Kim, of your breakout groups being all one age grouping or cross matching them all, I would be, I think, in favor of cross matching. So you're going to get differing points of view in each group, as opposed to a narrowly focused U18 is going to have the same perspective, but they're not going to be aware of what's necessarily the concerns of the groups further downstream from them. So I think there's merits on both sides, but I think the greater discussion is going to come from mixing up your groups and getting perspectives from every age bracket.
I think that's good insight, because this just came to me in the moment you said that. I'm like, oh, wait a second. All these people they're picking their teams now. They're all fighting for the same players. I probably don't want to leave them in the same breakout room. That's probably not going to go well. But I don't know. I think it'll be really interesting. And again, it's to me, it's very similar to what we did with the family survey. Is I want to know about their experience. How has it been for you? How can we make that better for you? That's part of my job. Because if we have phenomenal coaches here and they stay year after year after year and they help me make things better and better and better, like, everything else takes care of itself. You're going to get better player development. Like, to me, it's the linchpin. And in my experience, we've sort of just been left to our own devices. And again, I haven't been micromanaged, but I know some of the other coaches have been by the association. And I want to hear that, because again, I'm in that weird spot. I'm not on the board, I'm not, making those types of decisions on high, but I'm also no longer just a coach. So I want to take advantage of this spot, because of course, after this year, now I become the bad guy if I don't give them a coaching position next year, or if I, tell them they need to, look again at their evaluation processes because they're picking the wrong players or what have you. So I think I'm in a bit of a sweet spot where I can do no wrong at this point, especially since we're not going to get on the ice anytime soon. So it looks. So be it.
I think it's going to be a winning activity for you either way.
Yeah.
You're going to have
I think it'll be great.
Information to work with, and that's just going to make you better armed to come out with a better solution in the long run.
Yeah. I wrote down a couple words here. You are, by doing what you're doing this year, creating an awareness of accountability ethically and accountability technically. And that's the technical thing is sort of the moving, it's the moving water. Sometimes you're going to have waves, and this is going to go, and this is accepted, this is going to be working. I think the ethical accountability will contribute to the ability to let them play all positions, so let them read and think and react. It's connected. And to what degree is old school and new school relative to the parents that have been playing a certain way, and the game is changing so much. So you're in a good position to keep up with the game ahead of most associations with the role you've got. It's really interesting. This year happened. I see it for a different reason now. It's a good reason, and you got a chance to make a big impact with a big population, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I laugh a little bit because we have a couple coaching vacancies still to fill at the B level, so that would be right above house league for us. Yeah. So sort of that intro into rep, and so at the U13 and the U15, I'm still and kind of looking for coaches. So I've asked them to go through the same process as we do all our coaches, and they've not been asked to fill out, you know, in terms of their coaching philosophy and so forth before. So I sent them this link. Can you go please fill this out? All these guys are assistant coaches in house league. They're like, I'm going to need a couple days. I'm like, that's fine. But one guy sends it back to me for U13B, and he's got a son who plays on the boys' side of Leaside and a daughter who plays on the girls' side. And his son's a rep player at Leaside, and his daughter's a house league player in our organization. And in his coaching, you know, statement, you know, there's 5 questions to answer, you know, and he's kind of like, well, I think, you know, the boys have all this intensity and work ethic and la, 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 and we're going to get that there. And he's like, you know, and I'm going to bring in these other coaches to make sure we have, you know, great skills and set plays. And I'm thinking, U13B, you're going to have set plays. Like, I want to see what these set plays are.
Yeah.
Like, what is this set? Like, and again, I don't know. This guy freely admits he never played at a high level. He's played men's league the last 20 years. But, you know, he's like, oh, we're going to. So I'm, you know, I'm trying not to set my mind up to go, okay, this guy's a whatever. You know, that might just be the way he wrote it on paper. But I really thought to myself, like, U13B, these girls are 10, 11, 12. They've just come out of house league, probably, most of them. This is their first experience in rep. And we're going to be working on our power play face-off, I guess. We'll see what he says. It'll be interesting. So, you know, that's the part of it. I have to admit, I like the coach selection for the, like, empowerment of them, but the nuts and bolts of it, it's like recruiting players. It's like a lot of work for just.
Well, they're absolutely not doing it for the right reason. Like, boy, what you just said, it's U13, and I don't care if it's house. They've been playing whole ice hockey for 3 years now, 4 years maybe, right? So they line up for face-offs. They have power plays. They have penalty kills.
Yep.
And they all are teaching it the way it's always been taught, which is structure. Do this, do that. And their skills, if they're going to make the AA triple team, are good enough. But the mind is not developing by systematically structuring. And as soon as they play whole ice hockey, and I think if you look at the U8 video of Ramsey is not on today from Massachusetts, but I threw the video of his U8 team out with the Tampa Bay clip of free play and flow, and they'll do that. They'll do that. Now, whether they'll be